My sister erased my alarm, hid my keys, and ruined my Harvard shot. 10 years later, I'm head of surgery there, and she needed me to save her life. My sister pretended to be me when she contacted the interview site to cancel, erased my alarm, and concealed my car keys. Around 8:30 a.m., I woke up. Harvard Medical School called me 14 times and wanted to know why I hadn't arrived for my 7:30 a.m. interview. I had worked for 4 years to prepare for this interview, which would decide whether or not I was accepted into one of the top medical schools in the nation. I had left my phone on my nightstand, but it was plugged in across the room. I had fully switched off my alarm. When I picked it up, I noticed the voicemails, missed calls, and the urgent email from the admissions office. I listened to the first voicemail with trembling palms. The voice of a professional woman, a little worried. "This is Dr. Sarah Bennett from Harvard Admissions, Miss Turner. You were supposed to show up for your interview at 7:30 a.m. today, but you haven't. In the event of an emergency, kindly give us a call back right away to reschedule." 25 minutes later, the second voicemail was less kind. More annoyance from the same woman. "Now, Miss Turner, someone posing as you has called to inform us that you have decided not to continue your studies at Harvard. To make sure information is correct, we need you to get in touch with us personally." The admissions director left the third voicemail. "We're canceling your interview, Miss Turner. At 8 a.m. this morning, we received a call. Posing as you and saying you've chosen to go after other chances. You must get in touch with us within an hour and provide an explanation if this was not you. If not, we're going to proceed with other applicants." I phoned back right away, received voicemail, and frantically left a message saying that something was wrong because I had never called or canceled. 2 additional attempts yielded no response. I phoned the main office, sent emails, and eventually spoke with an assistant who informed me that the admissions committee had already filled my spot and was moving on. My phone number had sent them a very obvious call. They couldn't do anything with my phone number until I could show it wasn't me. I looked at my call history. At 8 a.m., nothing is leaving for Harvard. However, my phone wasn't on my nightstand when I woke up. It was across the room. My sister Sophia was in the kitchen brewing coffee when I came downstairs. She was 28 years old, 2 years my senior, and had been accepted to medical school 3 years prior on her first attempt. She was at the top of her class, completing her 3rd year at a separate program, and fulfilling every wish our parents had ever had. When I walked in, she glanced up and grinned. "You're up late, morning. You had that interview, didn't you?" Everything fell into place. My vehicle keys were gone from the rack by the entrance, where I normally put them. The phone had relocated across the room, and the alarm had been erased. During my gap year, I worked as an EMT and lived at home to save money. 2 months ago, Sophia returned home, stating that she wanted to save money before applying for residence because her apartment lease had finished. Having both girls back under one roof had delighted our parents. I said, "What did you do?" I spoke in a steady, icy tone. She sipped her coffee. "What are you discussing?" "You canceled my interview. You called them pretending to be me." "That's insane. Why would I do that?" Her gaze briefly wavered before she said, "Because you've spent 3 years being the golden child, and you couldn't stand me getting into a better program than yours." I witnessed it. Contentment. This was what she intended to accomplish. There was no miscommunication or accident here. She had purposefully ruined the most significant interview of my life. Her words, "You're being paranoid. Maybe you just overslept, and you're looking for someone to blame." My alarm was deleted. My phone was moved. My car keys are missing. And someone called for my phone number to cancel. Maybe you did it in your sleep. You've always been an anxious mess before a big event. Remember when you had that panic attack before the MCAT? As she stood in our parents' kitchen sipping coffee, she was lying to me about ruining my whole future. I snatched up my phone, opened the call log, and thrust it in her face. "There's no outgoing call at 8 o'clock, but they said someone called from my number. How did you do it?" "I have no idea what you're talking about, but honestly, Emily, this victim mentality is exactly why you're not getting into top programs. You need to take responsibility for your own failures." I felt like screaming and grabbing her coffee to hurl it against the wall. Rather, I returned upstairs, secured my door, and made another call to Harvard. I spoke with Dr. Bennett personally this time. I clarified that I had never canceled, that someone had called posing as me, and that at the time, my phone was showing no outgoing calls. She attentively listened before responding. "Miss Turner, the person who called knew specific details about your application, your undergraduate institution, your MCAT score, your research experience. This wasn't a random prank. It was my sister. She has access to all that information. We live in the same house. Can you prove it was her? No, but I can prove it wasn't me. My phone has no call log. Someone must have used a spoofing app or called from a different phone. Dr. Bennett let out a sigh. Even if that's true, we've already moved your slot to another candidate. Our interview season is nearly complete. I'm sorry, but there's nothing we can do this cycle. Thus, there are no repercussions when my sister ruins my opportunity to attend my ideal school. Although I can see your aggravation, this is a family concern, rather than an admissions issue in the absence of hard evidence. Next cycle, you are invited to reapply. She ended the call. My sister couldn't take me succeeding, so I sat on my bed and stared at the wall, trying to comprehend that 4 years of hard work had suddenly vanished. I had interviews at 8 o'clock after submitting applications to 10 other medical schools. On the morning of each of my interviews, Sophia unexpectedly became extremely busy. I began hiding my vehicle keys in my bed, setting 5 alarms, and sleeping with my phone under my pillow. She was not someone I trusted with anything pertaining to my applications. Although they were aware of the stress, my parents didn't get it. They stated I was exaggerating, and that Sophia would never do such a thing when I attempted to describe what she had done, that I could have slept in too late and was humiliated and trying to find someone to blame. There was nothing their golden child could do wrong. I simply couldn't get my life together as the younger daughter. I had 5 interviews and 2 of them went nicely. 1 didn't go well since I couldn't concentrate due to my sabotage paranoia. 2 were mediocre. I was turned down by 3 colleges and placed on a wait list at 2. Sophia received the residence of her choice. She had a celebratory supper hosted by my parents. She gave me this little, contented grin that no one else could see as I sat there grinning as they celebrated her achievement. I reapplied to medical schools and worked as an EMT for the next year. I was given my own apartment this time, a little studio that I could hardly afford. I was no longer going to live with her in that house. I wasn't going to give her another chance to ruin my future. I received 8 interviews after submitting 13 applications, and I was accepted into 2 programs. One was a reputable, well-established public university, but none of them were Harvard. That September, I agreed and got started. Sophia began her neurosurgery residency at a prominent Boston hospital the same year. She made my parents very pleased. She was training to operate on the brain. They had never heard of the state school I was attending. Medical school was harsh. I considered giving it up every day. The amount of work was overwhelming. It was a fierce competition. Everyone in my class appeared to be more intelligent, well-prepared and gifted by nature. To stay up, I studied twice as hard as everyone else. I didn't pass my first anatomy test. Barely made it through pharmacology, stayed in the library till 3 in the morning. Learning drug interactions and routes by heart. However, I possessed something that the other pupils did not. Fury. I was furious with my sister for what she had done. Every time I felt like giving up, I imagined her grinning at that dinner table, erasing my alert and taking my Harvard interview with no repercussions. When fatigue and self-doubt told me to quit, that anger kept me going. Since cardiothoracic surgery is the most difficult surgical specialty with the longest training, the greatest stakes, and the most grueling hours, I chose to specialize in it. Sophia had decided on neurosurgery because of its prestige. I wanted to outperform her in something she couldn't do, so I went with cardiothoracic. We began clinical rotations in our 3rd year of medical school. I put in as many extra hours as I could, stayed late to see surgeries and volunteered for every surgery. Attendees took note. Following a particularly challenging case, one of them, cardiothoracic surgeon Dr. Jonathan Scott, drew me aside. "You've been in the O more than any other medical student this year. Why?" "Because I love it and I want to be the best." He looked at me for a while. "Surgery isn't about being the best. It's about being good enough to save lives when it matters." "Then I want to be good enough that I never lose a patient because I wasn't skilled enough." Slowly, he nodded. "You've got the drive. Now you need the precision. Come observe my cases. I'll teach you what I can." I was mentored by Dr. Scott. Despite his harshness and demands, he recognized something in me. He gave me more freedom than most medical students do. During operations, ask questions, seal incisions, and fold retractor. He challenged me to think more quickly, move more accurately, and comprehend not just what we were doing, but also why. I placed in the top 10% of my class when I graduated from medical school. Respectable, but not the best. Applied to residencies and received interviews from 6 programs. Matriculated at a cardiothoracic surgery, reputable Philadelphia program. Although not the best, it is renowned for turning forth top-notch surgeons. In the same year, Sophia completed her residency in neurosurgery. She secured a position at a prestigious Boston hospital, earning twice as much as I would as a resident. For her white coat ceremony, my parents took a plane. Since it was the same weekend and they had already committed to hers, they chose not to attend mine. It was terrible to be a resident. 90-hour work weeks, 12, 14 and 16-hour operations, and attendants who yelled at you for even the slightest error. Patients who passed away even though we did everything correctly. I dropped more weight than was good for me. Ceased getting more than 4 hours of sleep per night. Lived in a condition of adrenaline and weariness all the time. However, I became better, quicker, and more accurate. I was the resident attending requested for challenging patients by my 3rd year. The one who remained composed when things went wrong in the OR, the one they trusted with challenging dissections. I was the most naturally gifted surgical resident that Dr. Scott, who had relocated to Philadelphia and was now an attending at my hospital, had trained in 20 years. I didn't think he was real. I was aware that I lacked innate skill. I had developed all of my skills by practice, anger, and a will to settle for anything less than great. I was the head resident in my 5th year of residency. The person who was summoned for every emergency, every complication, and every patient circling the drain at 3 in the morning, as well as the person in charge of scheduling, supervising the other residents, and operating the service. I had hardly an apartment anymore, just a space to store clothing and take the odd shower, and I lived in a hospital. In Boston, Sophia was doing quite well. My parents claimed that she was dating a prominent lawyer, delivering speeches at conferences, and having her work published in prestigious publications. For her, everything was ideal. Other than forced conversations during unavoidable family holidays, I hadn't talked to her in 5 years. She had never shown regret or even admitted her mistake. My parents believed I had nothing to be angry about. I was admitted to Mass General's Cardiothoracic Surgery Fellowship in Boston following my residency. Additional 2 years of training under the nation's top surgeons. Sophia remained in Boston. I kept my move there a secret from her. The camaraderie was tremendous. More responsibilities, more complicated situations. The hearts I operated on were declared inoperable by previous surgeons. Doing repairs, transplants, and other operations requiring minuscule accuracy. I lost clients. When doing heart surgery, it is unavoidable. I did, however, preserve more than I lost. Compared to the other guys, I had a better success rate. Attendees took note. The chairman of the heart surgery department, Dr. David Miller, began assigning me situations that other fellows weren't prepared for. My mother called me a year into my fellowship. She was in tears. At work, Sophia had passed out. They hurried her to the emergency room due to a brain aneurysm. She required urgent surgery. I was emotionless, only detached and logical. Which hospital? Mass General. They're prepping her for surgery now. Can you come? I'm already at Mass General. I'll find out what's happening. After hanging up, I proceeded to the operating room. I located Sophia's chart. It was a huge, irregular, and troublesome aneurysm. High chance of rupture when doing surgery. High chance of mortality or stroke. One of the top neurosurgeons in the department, Dr. Mark Evans, was assigned to her case, but he was engaged in another lengthy procedure. Now they needed someone to run it. The attending neurosurgeon inquired about availability. I said, then thought, I can do it. After examining me, Dr. Scott said, you're cardiac, not neuro. I've observed enough neuro cases. I know the anatomy, and she's my sister. There was silence in the room. Your sister? Yes. And if she dies while we're waiting for Evans to finish, that's on us. Dr. Scott looked at me for a while. Can you be objective? I'm always objective. That wasn't totally accurate. However, I was able to distinguish between medical necessity and emotional impulses. He gave a nod. Then scrub in. I'll supervise. I used hands that didn't tremble to get ready for surgery. With her skull shaved and marked for surgery, Sophia lay on the table unconscious. She was unaware that I was going to slit her brain. I was guided through it by Dr. Scott. The dangers, the perspectives, the strategy. We cautiously opened her head and found the aneurysm. The scans didn't reveal how bad it was. Bigger, with flimsy walls that may burst at any time. She would either bleed into her brain or have a stroke if she made a mistake. I worked with a level of accuracy I was unaware of. Every motion was regulated, and every clip was positioned precisely. I hardly needed Dr. Scott's guidance. I could sense the difference between vessels that were damaged and healthy tissue. May view the blood flow's design as a map. I inserted the last clip 6 hours into the procedure. They secured the aneurysm. Blood flow was securely redirected. No blood, no rupture. Sophia would live. I left the OR when we closed her up. In the waiting area were my parents. When they noticed that I was wearing surgical scrubs, they stood. My mom inquired, "How is she?" "Stable. The surgery went well. She'll need monitoring, but she should make a full recovery." With relief, my mother fell into my father. "Thank God." "Who was the surgeon?" "We need to thank them." My surgical cap came off. "I was the surgeon." They gazed at me. "You? But you're not a neurosurgeon." "I'm a surgical fellow. I know enough." And I was available when she needed someone immediately. There was something complex about my father's face. "You operated on your sister?" "Yes, but you two haven't spoken in 5 years." "You hate her." I considered that. About the 5 years of silence, the stolen interview, and the erased alarm. "I don't hate her. I just don't trust her. But she needed surgery, and I was capable of doing it. So I did." My mom broke down in tears. "Thank you. Thank you for saving her." I gave a nod and turned to go. Even if I had spared her life, everything she had done to me still remained. After 3 days, Sophia awoke. I wasn't present when it took place. I spent 9 hours in another surgery, this time for a heart transplant. She was awake and spoke to my parents by the time I was done. That night, I dropped by her room. She appeared frail and pale, but she was still alive, sitting up in bed with bandages over her head. Her face altered as she noticed me standing in the doorway. Shock followed by recognition. "Emily." "Hey." I remained in the entrance. Didn't approach. "They said you did my surgery." "I did." "Why?" "Because you needed one, and I was available." She lowered her gaze to her hands. "I could have died." "Yes." "The aneurysm was in a bad location, but I placed the clips correctly and rerouted blood flow. You'll be fine." "I don't understand." "After everything. Why would you help me?" I entered the room and shut the door after myself. "You want to talk about everything? Okay, let's talk about it." She became quite motionless. "You sabotaged my Harvard interview, deleted my alarm, hid my keys, called pretending to be me to cancel. You destroyed my chance at my top choice school because you couldn't handle me being better than you." "Emily, I'm not done. You did it and got away with it. Our parents didn't think I was telling the truth. You never said sorry. You simply watched me suffer for 5 years while you were successful in everything." I took a step toward her bed. "Here's what you didn't comprehend though. I was improved by your sabotage of me. Every hour you were asleep, I was researching. I offered to do every procedure while you were at ease. Because I refused to be anything other than exceptional, I was able to save every patient. That resulted from your actions." Sophia was weeping now, her face streaming with silent sobs. "You made me into a surgeon who could save your life when you needed it. So yeah. I operated on you. Not because I forgave you. Not because we're sisters. But because I'm a surgeon and you needed surgery. And I'm good enough now that I could do it right." I turned to go. Before I got to the door, she started talking. "I'm sorry." I halted, but I didn't look back. She went on to say, "I was jealous. You were always more intelligent and motivated than I was. I put a lot of effort into being the greatest, and you just comprehended everything. I freaked out when you got that Harvard interview. I reasoned that everyone would realize you were superior to me if you went there. I sabotaged you, and I've been regretting it ever since. I knew I was to blame after seeing you suffer. However, I was too arrogant to acknowledge it. You'll be all right, I told myself. You'll get accepted to another school. However, you weren't okay, and because of my own insecurities, I betrayed your confidence in our relationship." I pivoted. "You're correct. You did. And it's not resolved by your apologies. You're my sister, but I understand. And even though I detest what you did, I wasn't going to let you die when you required surgery." Sophia dabbed at her face. "Thank you for saving my life, even though I didn't deserve it. No one should have to pass away from an aneurysm. Not even you. We didn't start dating again right once, and I didn't forgive her simply because she said she was sorry, but something changed when she finally acknowledged the harm and accepted what she had done. It didn't make the 5 years of suffering go away, but it was something." I left her room and returned to work. After her operation, Sophia fully healed, returned to work 3 months later, and then departed Boston to take a position in California. Before she went, she texted me, "I'm happy that you outperformed me as a surgeon. You deserved it. After finishing my fellowship at the top of my class, I received an offer to work as an attending cardiac surgeon at Mass General, the same hospital where I had operated on my sister and demonstrated my ability to put professional need ahead of personal sentiments. This time, both of my parents attended my white coat ceremony and expressed their regret for not believing me about the Harvard interview, for blindly supporting Sophia, and for failing to see the amount of effort I had put in to get here. At my ceremony, Dr. Scott spoke about my precision, my dedication, and my ability to handle complex cases that other surgeons avoided. He said that I was one of the most talented cardiac surgeons he had trained in 30 years. I accepted their apology, but I kept in mind that I had come this far despite, not because of, them. He was unaware of Sophia's efforts to undermine me, the erased alarm, or the stolen interview. He simply recognized my extraordinary ability to save lives. After 3 years of attending, I published a paper on a novel method of fixing complicated heart valve defects, which was picked up by major journals. I began receiving invitations to speak at conferences, and hospitals began hiring me for leadership roles. I remained at Mass General and concentrated on developing a program for high-risk cardiac patients, those that other surgeons said were too far gone. I became known for taking cases that seemed hopeless and somehow bringing patients through, and I had one of the highest success rates in the nation. Sophia and I now speak occasionally, not frequently, but occasionally. My parents tried to make up for years of favoritism by attending my lectures, asking about my research, and telling their friends about their daughter, the cardiac surgeon. She called on birthdays and texted about cases she found interesting. We weren't close, and probably never would be, but we weren't enemies either. She had ruined something between us that couldn't be completely fixed, but we'd managed to survive together. 10 years after Sophia ruined my Harvard interview, I received a call from Harvard, and Dr. Bennett, the admissions director who told me there was nothing she could do, was now the chair of their surgery department. It felt hollow at times, as if they only valued me now that I had achieved visible success. But I accepted it because harboring resentment took energy I needed for surgery. Why me? They wanted me to come lead their new cardiac surgery program, she stated. I inquired. Because of your outstanding success rate and the way your study is changing the way we handle complicated valve repairs, you'd fit right in. You rejected my application 10 years ago. A pause occurred. I recall. You said your interview was ruined by your sister. She did. Years later, she finally acknowledged it. One more pause. Then I owe you an apology and a job offer if you're interested. After giving it some thought, I realized that the school that had turned me down was now offering me a leadership role, and that the interview Sophia had stolen had helped me become better than I would have been if I had been accepted the first time. I'm interested, but I have conditions. After 3 weeks of negotiations, Harvard agreed to all of my demands, including autonomy over my program, research funds, and the freedom to teach residents how I saw fit. I took the job, relocated to Baltimore, and began developing a heart surgery program that concentrated on the patients whom everyone else had rejected. When I was asked to speak at a national surgery conference 6 months into my new position on the subject of overcoming challenges in surgical training, I nearly rejected. Since I'm not very good at public speaking, but my former mentor Dr. Scott persuaded me to accept. There were hundreds of surgeons, residents, and medical students in the lecture hall. I stood at the podium and told them my story, which was utterly silent, about how I applied to medical school and got my top interview, about how my sister deleted my alarm, hidden my keys, and called to cancel while I was asleep, and about waking up to missed calls and dashed hopes. I told them about my sister's aneurysm and the decision to operate despite everything she had done, about being rejected, reapplying, choosing cardiothoracic surgery out of rage, and about working twice as hard as everyone else to prove I deserved to be there. Because she was worried that I would surpass her, she ruined my interview. And you know what? I've improved. Her actions forced me to put in more effort than I otherwise would have, not because I'm inherently more gifted. She unintentionally produced the surgeon who saved her life while attempting to ruin my future. Applause broke out throughout the room. There was a 2-minute standing ovation. Following the talk, dozens of people approached me to share their personal stories of being betrayed by family members, having parents who didn't believe in them, having siblings who competed instead of supporting them, or being told they weren't good enough as medical students. They said it gave them hope to hear that someone had overcome such betrayal and still succeeded. I had a ringing phone that night. I nearly didn't respond, Sophia, but something compelled me to answer. I watched your lecture, she said. Someone posted it online. I waited. All of your statements were accurate. I attempted to ruin your future, and as a result, you outperformed me. Her voice broke. I'm sorry. I've mentioned it before. But until I heard you share that tale with a group of strangers, I don't believe I truly realized what I got from you. I took your ideal school away from you and made you start over, and for some reason, you were still more successful than I was. I didn't succeed despite you. I stated, I succeeded because I refused to let what you did define me. I understand, but you have the right to be upset about it. You are free to despise me. I'm not hostile toward you. I just do not trust you, and I doubt that I ever will. She remained silent for a while. That's reasonable. I deserved that. It wasn't precisely closure, but it was recognition, and we hung up after a few more minutes of conversation. My program at Harvard expanded, and within 3 years we were ranked among the best cardiac surgery programs in the nation. I trained residents who later became department chairs at other hospitals, and I published papers that changed surgical protocols across the country. She recognized what she had done, and I had moved past allowing it to control me. My patients, those who everyone claimed were too dangerous, too complicated, or too ill, survived at rates that attracted the attention of other programs. I received honors, invitations to join the editorial boards of prestigious journals, and offers to chair departments at hospitals throughout the nation. Since Harvard was the school that had rejected me and I was now improving it, I stayed because I had created something significant there. I received a letter from the medical school 15 years after the ruined interview, stating that they wanted to establish an endowment scholarship in my name for students who had overcome major obstacles to become doctors. Students like me had been battling against unsupportive families, rebuilding after setbacks, and persevering in the face of all the reasons to give up. We called it the Second Chance Scholarship because sometimes the route you didn't select brings you to a better place than you could have ever dreamed of. I said yes, and put my own money into the fund. When Sophia learned about the scholarship, she called. That is amazing. You're assisting those who are similar to you and us. You overcame obstacles too, I corrected. You were one of them, but you're no longer one of them. I was your hurdle, but they were different ones. She made a sound that was a mix of relief and sadness as she laughed. When did you become so grown up? When I stopped letting what you did matter more than what I accomplished. After that we spoke more frequently, not always, but enough that I was invited to her wedding. She was among the first individuals to purchase my books on advanced cardiac surgical procedures. We would never have the connection we should have because of the damage and years we had lost, but we did have something in common, an awareness that we had both made errors and had moved past them. When my textbook was out, my parents had a dinner party. There were 2 daughters there, both successful in their careers, and my father made a toast about how proud he was of his surgeon daughters. I reflected on the years he had not trusted me, the times he had blindly accepted Sophia's version of events, but I also imagined him attending my lectures now, reading my papers, and attempting to comprehend my work. To my daughters, he added, lifting his glass. Both of whom demonstrated that willpower is more important than luck. We drank to that. To resolve, to becoming individuals our younger selves wouldn't recognize. To rebuilding lives from the rubble of treachery and sabotage. I caught Sophia's eye across the table, and she offered me a faint grin in return, not the same smirk from years before, but something sincere. I'm the head of cardiac surgery at Harvard, 20 years after the erased alarm, and I oversee a school that prepares the next generation of surgeons. I operate on hearts that other surgeons believe cannot be repaired, and I educate residents that tough is simply another term for impossible. When students inquire about how I got here or how I developed this career, I tell them the truth. My sister ruined my medical school interview, erased my alarm, concealed my keys, and robbed me of my opportunity to attend my dream school. She attempted to ruin my future because she was worried that I would surpass her, but in the process, she inspired me to become exceptional. I tell them about operating on Sophia's aneurysm, about saving the life of the person who had attempted to destroy mine, about choosing to be a surgeon rather than a victim, and that sometimes the people who hurt you the most teach you the most important lessons. I also tell them that betrayal can be fuel if you're angry and stubborn enough to not let it break you. Some of them have their own Sophias, their own saboteurs, and some of them comprehend. I teach those pupils that the greatest response to betrayal is to live well, and that the finest retaliation is to become so successful that those who attempted to stop you must see your accomplishment. We now speak a few times a year. Sophia is a successful neurosurgeon who owns her own clinic in California. She is recognized and skilled in her field, albeit not as motivated as I am. I sometimes wonder what might have happened if I had allowed someone else to operate on her aneurysm, if I had stepped back and let Dr. Evans handle it after he finished his other surgery, if I had chosen vengeance over medicine, but that was never really a choice. Because I'm a surgeon before I'm a betrayed sister. She never had another health crisis, and she never required another surgery. Because it's more important to save lives than to settle scores. I stand at the front of the room and think about the 23-year-old me. My name is now on the Emily Turner Surgical Education Center, the Harvard lecture hall where I teach. It is supported by my speaking fees and textbook royalties, and students come in every week to learn from me. That version of myself had no idea she'd end up here, teaching at the school that turned her down, running the program she wasn't good enough to attend, saving lives with hands that learned precision from sheer willpower. She was devastated and betrayed, watching her future vanish because someone she trusted had sabotaged her. Every surgery I do, every life I save, every student I train. That's proof that betrayal doesn't have to be the end of your story. Sometimes it's just the beginning of becoming who you were always meant to be. My sister attempted to destroy me, but instead she made me invincible. Last year, Sophia and I met up at a conference, drank coffee in between sessions, and discussed our lives, professions, and the gap between our former selves and current selves. She asked whether I had ever really forgiven her, and I told her that I had, but forgiveness wasn't the proper word. She did, however, alter the course of my life, making me more determined, harder, and less trusting. Those were facts to be accepted, not things to be forgiven. In a strange sense, though, I'm thankful that you pushed me out, since I doubt I would have pushed this hard otherwise. Slowly, she nodded. I created my own monster. No, you produced a surgeon skilled enough to preserve your life in a time of need. It isn't a monster. That's just someone who refused to let you win. We finished our coffee and walked to separate sessions, and as I watched her leave, I felt nothing. No animosity, no wrath, no anguish lingered, just the peaceful contentment that comes from knowing that I had created a life that she couldn't harm, that all I had accomplished had been built on the worst thing she had ever done to me. I became a surgeon because my sister ruined my medical school interview, and I was good enough to rescue her, not because she deserved it, but because I had developed the ability to save others, even those who attempted to destroy me. The true form of retaliation is not hurting them back, but mastering your art to the point where you surpass their treachery completely, and become absolutely exceptional in spite of all the challenges they put in your way. I became the greatest in my industry because she attempted to make me fail, and every day I work and save lives is evidence that she didn't succeed. Mom abandoned me when I was pregnant. I fought for 4 years in a shelter. Now she wants back in my daughter's life after learning who her dad is. I informed my mother I was pregnant at 22. She gave me 2 hours to pack and leave. Declared I could handle the penalties of becoming a changed locks while sitting on the front step with 2 garbage bags of clothes and nowhere to go. My daughter's father was a college freshman orientation one-night stand. Ethan was visiting from Switzerland, but I didn't know his last name. Never saw him again after that night. He didn't know his number or school. I quit school, moved into a shelter, and left Lily in a county hospital while my mother told everyone I went to Vegas to strip. Hell lasted 4 years. Customers grabbed my ass for $3 tips while waiting tables at a restaurant. Black mold and insects at a studio. Lily slept in a dresser drawer because I couldn't afford a cot. Food stamps, WIC appointments, trekking 4 miles to work since the bus didn't leave early. My mother's 4-bedroom house was 25 minutes distant. Without calling or visiting, she informed family I was deceased. My sister Rachel surreptitiously met me at parks and brought Lily secondhand clothes, but she was too terrified to do more. Mom threatened to cut her off if she helped me. I succeeded though. I got my GED online while Luke slept. She started community college at 3. Got better waitressing gigs, saved money, and relocated to a safer apartment. Lily was smart, humorous, read at 4, and did basic math before school. Everything I did was for her. I saw a guy enter my restaurant last month. An expensive suit with a Swiss accent stared at me. I was finally asked if I attended State University 4 years prior. My heart stopped. Ethan became Benjamin Foster. His family ran luxury hotels across Europe. After his cousin gave him my university orientation archive photo, he searched for me for 3 years. He hired detectives, investigated social media, and spent thousands to find a female he'd spent one night with because he couldn't forget me. I introduced him to Lily and her photo. He sobbed at the restaurant. His father pushed him to marry Ace. Benjamin declined, thinking of the American girl who'd drunkenly quoted Shakespeare and laughed at his bad jokes. His desire was to meet Lily quickly. In a week, he set up a trust fund for her, bought us a house, and demanded $8,000 a month for 4 years of child support. His family traveled up from Switzerland and lavished Lily with love and presents. My mother returned then. She came to my new residence with flowers and tears, admitting her mistake. She missed us a lot. Family should pardon. My neighbors. Informed her about the Mercedes in my driveway, Swiss registration plates, and high-end store delivery vans. She knew Benjamin's identity and family value from her investigation. Since Lily had a trust fund and Swiss finishing school potential, she wanted to be involved. I let her in and speak. She talked about second chances, my youth, and her desire for the best. After seeing Lily's photo with Benjamin's family at their Swiss house, she was beaming. "We should plan her 6th birthday together," remarked. "Maybe in Switzerland? I've always wanted to see Geneva." Benjamin entered from the kitchen. He heard everything. My mother looked radiant, extended her hand, and gushed about her granddaughter. Benjamin thought her hand was sewage-covered. He said, "You're the woman who threw out your pregnant daughter." My mother mumbled stern love and duty. Benjamin flashed her something on his phone. Her face blanched. "The shelter where your daughter spent her first month homeless sent this police report. She was abandoned as a youth. Her social services file shows she requested for emergency housing at 7 months pregnant. This hospital report shows she gave birth alone as impoverished. Want me to continue?" Benjamin interrupted my mother's explanation. He swiped to another screen and faced her. He spoke quietly yet sharply. The shelter intake form had my name at the top and a red checkbox for abandoned minor. My mother started speaking, but Benjamin interrupted her to ask whether she wanted him to finish his investigator's 4-year paperwork. I halted outside the kitchen doorway, grasping the frame, watching her make excuses. She said she didn't grasp how awful things were, thought I'd figure it out, and was angry and afraid. Benjamin showed medical and social services paperwork like court evidence as he navigated through additional screens without looking away. Tears mingled with my mother's foundation, which she'd meticulously applied before coming here. She spun around and trembled, saying she'd been so scared, made a terrible mistake, and thought about me every day. I moved back before she could touch me and spoke calmly when I ordered her to go. Benjamin supported me as I opened the front door without speaking. My mother stood in the midst of my new living room, looking shocked. She requested that we chat so she could explain. I held the door open with my heart racing so loudly I felt everyone could hear it, but my hand didn't shake the knob. She collected her handbag and flowers and walked by me with her head down and more tears. Before closing the door, I saw her get into her car and drive away, then rested against it for a bit as my legs weakened. Benjamin and I sat at the kitchen table after I verified that Lily was still sleeping upstairs, her nightlight flickering softly through her door gap. He apologized for ambushing me with the documents, saying he'd paid detectives to find me and gathered everything. He saved my complete survival story in the files in case I needed evidence. I held a chilly mug of tea as we discussed what to do. Instead of pushing for immediate family visits and plans with Lily, he startled me by proposing we start with formal paternity confirmation. He wanted everything legal and safeguarded since Lily and I deserved it after handling a debt for so long. 3 days later, we saw Samantha Harper in her downtown office with thick carpet and framed legal degrees. She was younger than expected, maybe mid-30s, with a functional suit and no-nonsense face. Samantha stated that Benjamin hired her to serve my interests, not his, and that she worked for me alone even though he paid her. She explained how to get a court-admissible DNA test. Having a lawyer who responded just to me was weird, but safer than imagined. Samantha took notes on a yellow legal pad while she asked comprehensive questions regarding protected items and my biggest concerns. Before test results arrived, she explained financial constraints with a packet of paperwork. Benjamin immediately placed back child support into an escrow account that would release following official paternity confirmation. He couldn't take the house he bought back whatever occurred between us since it was in my name with legal safeguards. I was intimidated by page after page of jargon and phrases, but Samantha described each portion in straightforward English. She listed every precaution she'd taken to protect Lily and me in case something went wrong. My palm cramped as I signed where she instructed, but I was glad for every word that prevented ambiguity. After we finished, Rachel texted me that Mom was phoning every relative. She told them I kept Luke a secret out of anger and was cruel for not letting her be a grandma. The old worry of familial isolation hit strongly. That sensation of isolation that marked the past 4 years. I reassured myself that most of their family thought I was a Vegas dancer anyhow. They never contacted me when I needed support. Lily glanced up at me curiously as we sat on her bed with her plush rabbit under one arm that evening. I just stated that a European acquaintance I'd known before she was born wanted to meet her. I promised her we'd take our time to figure out whether he was pleasant. I didn't call him father since nothing was proven, and I wouldn't break my commitments. Lily nodded earnestly and inquired whether the buddy enjoyed cartoons too. I didn't know, but she could ask him questions and determine how she felt. At the end of the first week, we gathered at a lovely Saturday morning public park with newer equipment and wood chips instead of concrete. Benjamin brought a cheap soccer ball and asked Lily about her favorite color and playgrounds. Standing partially behind my leg, she was timid at first but interested enough to say she enjoyed purple and swings. I saw them kick the ball on the grass from near. Benjamin, moving slowly and speaking softly. Lily stopped the ball with her foot and inquired why he spoke strange, tilting her head like a jigsaw figure. Benjamin chuckled warmly and said he was from Switzerland, where people talk differently. He told her McDonald's is there, but the menu is in French and German. I saw him be honest and age-appropriate. Instead of promising trips or gifts, answer her inquiries like she was a genuine person whose ideas mattered. I watched from a bench as they kicked the ball. Near enough to intervene, remote enough to interact. As they played, Lily's guard relaxed, but she still looked at me every few minutes to make sure I was there. My mother left a message on day 8 that I listened to twice before deleting. She said she forgives me for withholding Lily from her for years. That she wanted to go on as a family for Luke and was ready anytime I was. I was irritated and fatigued after listening. Dealing with an incomprehensible person exhausts you to the core. I didn't call back because I needed time to ponder and was done jumping into hurtful things. The phone stayed quiet on my kitchen counter while I spread peanut butter to Lily's liking for lunch. I understood that not answering was preferable than explaining myself again. I drove straight to work for the early shift after dropping Lily off at kindergarten the next morning. I took my midday break and strolled 3 blocks to the public library where I studied for my GED when Lily was a newborn. I opened up legal information web pages concerning grandparents' rights in our state on an empty computer terminal in the rear corner. The restrictions were strict, requiring proof of a relationship or that stopping contact would harm the kid. My mother had neither, but the websites warned that determined grandparents might file petitions and drag families through thousands of dollars in court fights. I noted legislation, case names, and filing requirements in a notepad. Gathering knowledge made the terror seem smaller, more controllable, like something I could prepare for. I took phone images of the pertinent pages and contacted Samantha Harper with a brief message asking if we should be alarmed. I put on my apron and took dinner orders at the restaurant. Half my thoughts is on legal terms. Samantha's name showed on my phone during my break the next afternoon. She requested a consultation to shield Lily and me from legal harassment, saying that we needed a paper trail and defined limits before my mother could gain legal ground. To accommodate the appointment on Tuesday at 10 a.m., I swapped shifts with another server. 2 frequent customers sat in my area on Friday night, speaking loud enough for me to hear about the Mercedes with Swiss plates parked outside and whether I was dating a royal. Though my face burned, I held my pen steady on the order pad and wrote their food choices clearly. A few minutes later, my boss saw me frozen at the kitchen door and discreetly inquired if I was okay, offering to shift me to different tables if people were disturbing me. I thanked him but claimed I could handle it, though my hands trembled carrying dishes back to the dining room. Rachel emailed me on Saturday afternoon wondering where we might meet for coffee. I recommended a spot across town along the freeway where no one from our area would know us. She was already in a corner booth when I arrived. She had her college textbook on the table, but her eyes seemed sad. We got coffee and she said she wanted to help me but was afraid Mom would cut her off financially because she was only halfway through her degree and couldn't lose her tuition. I grabbed her hand across the table and told her I understood and that she'd helped us more than anybody by smuggling supplies throughout those terrible years. We sobbed quietly and wiped them away so other customers wouldn't see. Monday morning's DNA test in a downtown medical facility with official documentation and chain of custody protocols seemed more serious than expected. A technician in blue scrubs described each process on labeled paperwork and swabbed Lily's face and Benjamin with long cotton sticks. Lily laughed and asked whether they were checking for cavities like the dentist, and Benjamin grinned and mumbled something similar. We decided silently not to tell her what the test was for until we received results, keeping our explanations basic, honest, and not intimidating. Lily ran to the car saying the stick tickled, while Benjamin and I looked relieved. Week 3's legal session saw Samantha distribute alternatives over her conference table like cards in a tricky game. We could file for court-ordered custody, set privacy measures to protect this from becoming viral, and send my mother a cease and desist letter if she kept bothering us. Though the paperwork seemed unending, stacks of documents needing signatures and notarization, the clarity helped. Benjamin and I spent 2 hours that afternoon creating a co-parenting framework that began with supervised visits and increased dependent on Lily's comfort. Samantha proposed realistic timetables with holiday and sick day backups, making it feel reasonable rather than intimidating and overwhelming. While waiting for test results, we signed the document in good faith with official signatures at the bottom. Lily's school number appeared on my phone during my supper shift on Thursday. The administrator said calmly but firmly that my mother had come to the office pretending to be the grandmother and inquired about pickup procedures. Telling my manager I had an emergency, I left work immediately, my hands quivering with protective wrath. Drove 6 blocks to school. The administrator said they hadn't published any information and asked if I wanted to file a formal restriction to prevent repeat incidences. I agreed without hesitation, filling out the papers at the office as Lily played on the playground, unconscious of what occurred. The next day, Samantha wrote to my mother to set a no-contact limit and warn her that any additional attempts to access Lily or propagate family rumors will result in legal action. Signing it felt me sick with remorse but oddly strong, like I was choosing safety above peace for the first time in my life. After Lily went to bed, I started a secret notebook of every mother-related encounter, voicemail and incident. Samantha suggested it may matter in court, but it helped me process. Organizing chaos into written facts. Recording what happened made it difficult to mistrust myself afterward since it couldn't be changed. The next afternoon, Benjamin brought a European furniture brochure with sticky notes advertising $2,500 dollhouses to my flat. He spread the catalog on my kitchen table and pointed to a Victorian-style mansion with working lights and hand-carved details, saying, "Lily deserved beautiful things after the years we'd struggled." The price tag made my stomach twist because it was more than 2 months of my old rent. More than I'd spent on apartment furnishings. I told him it was too much too quickly and that Lily was 5 and would be fine with a $40 plastic toy shop one. He appeared perplexed and upset, as if he didn't understand why pouring money at everything wasn't the answer. I told him that experiences were more important than costly things after 20 minutes of discussion. Visiting the children's museum or zoo would make nicer memories than a playhouse she'd outgrow. Instead of resisting, Benjamin suggested we take a weekend vacation to the Science Center with Lily's favorite interactive displays. That willingness to listen and alter direction was more valuable than any gift. A courier delivered the DNA findings 3 days later in an official package with lab seals and legal stamps. Benjamin came over that night and we reviewed pages of genetic markers and chance percentages on my couch, confirming what we already knew. Lily came in from her room where she'd been coloring and sat on the couch with us, keeping our voices low. Benjamin informed her he was her daddy and had been seeking for us for a long time. He didn't know about her before, but now he did, and wanted to be part of her life. Lily thought over this silently, her face serious like youngsters attempting to grasp something profound. She wondered whether she had Swiss grandparents like her friend Maya did in California. We replied sure, that her whole family wanted to meet her when she was ready, but only when she felt comfortable. She nodded and resumed coloring, perhaps needing time to reflect. Samantha Harper recommended Catherine Wilson, a child therapist who helped with youngsters going through big family transitions, the next morning when we met. We planned an intake visit for the next week to give Lily time to process without intervention. Professional support didn't accept failure, Samantha said. It protected Lily from adult overload. Learning to seek for aid didn't make me weak. It meant I was knowledgeable enough to recognize our guiding needs. I spotted a strange local area code on my phone that afternoon while working at the restaurant. I was requested to call back for a remark on the secret air myth circulating online. When the reporter said she'd heard about Benjamin's daughter and wanted to check details before writing, my palms started trembling. I panicked and phoned Samantha from the restaurant restroom. She urged me to enact the privacy strategy we agreed, which included no media interaction and letting the story die from lack of information. We decided to remain silent and use silence as a defense. My mother's handwriting appeared on a big envelope in my mailbox 2 days later. She apologized for her blunders but also listed all the locations she wanted to take Lily, and suggested we organize a family trip to Switzerland in a 5-page letter. She talked about missing us and how families should forgive, but every phrase had chains and demands that I forget 4 years of desertion. After reading it again, I saw how she was attempting to get back in by pretending everything was forgiven, and we were a happy family again. Her goal was to enter Lily and Benjamin's world without proving herself. The letter joined the other material in my documents folder. I met Catherine Wilson in her office the following Tuesday while Benjamin waited in the lobby. Her inquiries included Lily's habit, personality, how she'd handled changes before and what frightened me most about this move. Benjamin arrived and we discussed the problem from our views as Catherine took notes. After an hour, she brought Lily in for a calm, age-appropriate session with toys and painting tools. Catherine casually questioned Lily about her family and feelings as she sketched and played with miniature dolls. Catherine concluded that we should maintain Lily's routine stable and introduce changes gradually, allowing her control relationship building. She offered us scripts for discussing difficult things and checking in with Lily without interrogating her. Rachel contacted that night asking if I'd consider monitored restricted contact with our mother to avoid her filing for grandparents' rights out of spite. I stared at my phone, torn between protecting Rachel and knowing my mother hadn't yet gained access to Lily. I wanted to ease my sister's burden after years of discreetly aiding us. However, another part realized that manipulating to avoid conflict was how my mother had ruled everyone for decades. I told Rachel I needed to consider and consult my lawyer. Samantha showed me the state's grandparents' petition laws the next morning, demonstrating me that my mother had practically little standing to claim visitation without an actual relationship. She offered mediation initially as a good faith gesture that would establish legal paperwork if my mother was unreasonable. We could show a court we attempted to resolve problems, and my mother was the hurdle. I consented to mediation if strong restrictions were drawn out concerning contact and limits. That afternoon, the reporter left another note on my apartment door. This one offered to meet off the record to hear my perspective before others warped the narrative. I grasped the page, wanting to correct the record and control the story. I remembered Samantha's advice that engaging provided the tailfire and attention, and that silence was the fastest way to make it uninteresting and useless. I shredded and tossed away the note. Catherine had Lily draw her family and feelings during her second therapy appointment the following week. Lily sketched a question mark-filled thinking bubble over her head in the middle. After Catherine gently questioned what she was worried about, Lily stated she was afraid her daddy would leave again like he did, even though she knew he didn't know about her. We addressed her concern by calling it out instead of pretending everything was normal. Benjamin brought a large craft shop bag that weekend, and we sat at the kitchen table with Lily. He took out a blank monthly calendar with large daily squares and 2 sheets of stickers with airplanes, video cameras, hearts, and stars. Lily gasped and grabbed the stickers as Benjamin explained that we were constructing a chart to illustrate when he would visit and when they would communicate on the internet. I saw her carefully choose purple hearts for video call days and gold stars for in-person visits from the stickers. Benjamin pointed to each spot and let her place stickers to tally the days between visits. Although she glued them somewhat wrong and overlapping, she was really earnest. She wanted to hang it in her room immediately away once we completed. We tacked it on her bedside wall so she could view it every morning. She adored it and begged for more stickers for birthdays and other special days. Benjamin agreed and gave her the full sheet, and seeing them plan relaxed me. Benjamin called 3 days later when I was doing laundry to ask if his parents could have some Lily photographs for their family album. I dropped my shirt as my body stiffened. I told him I needed to think, and we could discuss later. After we hung up, I felt my protective walls slam back, thinking of strangers across the ocean seeing images of my baby. That night, Samantha Harper helped me see that some photo sharing was okay, but could set harsh regulations. The next day, I offered Benjamin 3 shots I would choose with a signed agreement that nothing got on social media and the photos kept with his close family. He accepted without hesitation and thanked me for trusting him to share so much. I chose 3 photographs from last month of Lily reading, playing at the park, and smiling. Sending them seemed like giving up bits of her I couldn't guard. But I did it because Benjamin had gained trust. Rachel missed 5 calls the next morning. I contacted her back and she said to check Mom's Facebook immediately. My stomach was turning as I opened the app and saw a new album called My Precious Girls with 20 childhood images of Rachel and myself. The subtitles mentioned happy memories, strong family relationships, and her gorgeous kids. I barely remembered birthday and holiday photos. Everyone before I became pregnant. No photos from the previous 4 years because she wasn't there. Many relatives commented on how pleasant the memories were and how great a mother she must be. Reading her rewrite history for the ignorant made me ill. Rachel had screenshotted and forwarded me every photo and description for proof. She wanted me to document Mom's activities in case it mattered. I saved everything to an evidence folder on my phone and attempted to use the hurt instead of falling into old doubts. That afternoon, Samantha Harper called to say she'd organized mediation with family conflict specialist Victoria Clark. The agreement included ground guidelines for the 2-week session. My mother had to apologize for each action, pledge to commencing treatment within a week, and agree in writing that any contact with Lily was my decision with no time frame. Samantha stated my mother's lawyer read the agreements and she'd attend. I was startled she agreed such harsh restrictions, but Samantha reminded me that my mother probably assumed she could charm her way through mediation and get what she wanted. We'd see if she followed through or if it was manipulation. 2 nights later, I worked dinner at the restaurant, and everything was okay until table 12. I accepted his order as usual when a Thursday regular sat down. He grinned at me as I brought his dinner and shouted loudly enough for surrounding tables to hear that I'd found a rich Swiss guy. Was I sure I hadn't captured him intentionally? My face was burning as I froze with the plate in my hand. I carefully set the plate down and requested him to stop since it was unacceptable. He laughed like a joke, but my manager heard from across the room. She approached and politely ordered him to pay his payment and go. She refused to let him argue and claimed the restaurant didn't allow customer harassment. He fled after throwing cash on the table as customers watched. My boss massaged my shoulder and urged me to take a 5-minute back break. I stood in the kitchen shivering with fury and relief that someone supported me. Benjamin and I met with our lawyers at Samantha Harper's office the following Monday. She meticulously planned a temporary parenting plan. Benjamin visited every other weekend for 6 hours on Saturday and Wednesday night video calls. Structured, documented financial help would be provided. We had to agree on Lily's schooling, health, and hobbies. Typing was formal with signatures and witness lines. Ben and I signed numerous copies of our names at the conference table across from each other. It was safer to document everything in legal terminology than to trust each other. The framework protected Lily most, preventing us from making hasty changes without procedure. Samantha submitted the plan with the court that afternoon, making it official. Victoria Clark's downtown office hosted the mediation on a dreary Thursday morning. My mother was on time, dressed well, and bringing tissues in her handbag. Victoria sat between us and discussed the regulations before we began. My mother sobbed instantly, claiming she'd made a horrible mistake since she was young and afraid when I became pregnant. But then she justified teaching me responsibility and saying rough love was best. Though my heart was racing and I interrupted her, I maintained cool. I wanted her to admit acts without excuses. I told her everything she did, asking her to confirm she recalled pushing me out with 2 hours' notice, changing the locks, denying communication for 4 years, and telling relatives I was dead. She sobbed more but explained her rationale. Victoria stopped her and explained the exercise required unjustified acknowledgement. My mother wanted to defend herself, but she decided to write everything down as homework. Victoria agreed to evaluate her writing 2 weeks later. The next day, Catherine Wilson and I discussed mediation. She attentively reviewed Victoria's notes and inquired about the session. I told her hearing my mother weep was harder than imagined, but I was glad I demanded accountability. Catherine helped me consider if Lily could safely undergo supervised contact. She stated my mother had to show continuous improvement, not merely apologize and demand access. Together, we set criteria. 6 months of weekly treatment with attendance verification, written accountability for her behavior without excuses or explanations, and no pushback or manipulation of my boundaries. We would contemplate a supervised meeting between her and Lily only if she regularly met all 3 standards. I liked the timeline because it let my mother work while safeguarding Lily from a stranger. The reporter's account appeared in a local internet news site Saturday morning. I forced myself to read it with coffee, expecting horror. It respected and prioritized privacy rights for complicated families. After the writer fact-checked everything and I declined to respond, much of it was legal boundary conjecture that faded off within 2 days. It wasn't rumor, which reassured me. Some coworkers saw it, but nobody asked. Rachel texted me that afternoon. Mother texted her all morning moaning that I was hiding her kid from her and begged Rachel to talk to me on her behalf. This time Rachel didn't relay Mom's concerns or intervene. She contacted me to say she'd advised Mom to work with the mediator and ceased using her as a go-between. She stated she was tired of being in the middle and that Mom needed to gain our trust by her actions. I responded back thanking her and praising her for putting that barrier. Rachel seems to be finding her voice instead of pleasing everyone. I made Lily breakfast the next morning and Benjamin asked if we could meet at the park near my place to discuss his schedule. We sat on a seat as Lily played on the swings 20 feet away, where I could see her. He showed us his phone calendar and advised staying for a week instead of 3 days, claiming his family wanted more time with Lily and he could work remotely from the hotel. I tensed up and told him the therapist had said gradual increments were best for Lily, that leaping from 3 to 7 days was too rapid. He looked agitated, ran his hand through his hair, and argued she was all right. I stopped him and indicated that she appeared okay, so we shouldn't press harder, that youngsters often displayed stress unexpectedly later. He sat quietly while Lily pumped her legs on the swing, then nodded and said he understood, even though leaving was hard when things were well. I liked that he listened instead of arguing and slowed down, even if it was against his will. We promised to stay 3 days this time and add 1 day next month if Lily adjusted well. We felt like we were learning to work together instead of just sacrificing to maintain the peace. Victoria Clark emailed me an attachment 3 days later showing my mother's first therapy intake appointment. A qualified therapist signed a paper confirming the session date and time and a treatment plan outlined for weekly visits. I glanced at the document for a while, hoping but primarily suspicious. An appointment didn't erase 4 years of desertion or decades of her controlling and conditional behavior. Victoria Clark's email was professional and impartial, recognizing improvement without exaggerating it. She reminded me that lasting transformation takes months, not weeks, and that this was only the first step. I added the email to my mediation documents folder, adding to the accumulating mountain of evidence that chronicled everything. That afternoon, I traveled to my former neighborhood for the first time since moving. After 3 years in that dingy studio apartment with Lily, I parked outside. The front door paint was still flaking, and the parking lot still had oily water puddles. The memories weighed me down while I sat with the engine running and windows open. The mildew scent that persisted despite bleaching. Lily cried from hunger as I waited for my salary to buy formula. Because the bus didn't arrive early for my shift, I walked 4 kilometers to work in the dark, counting pennies to determine if I had enough for the laundromat, or another week of unclean clothing. My daily worry and calculation of which bill to skip to eat. I clutched the steering wheel and remembered why I was careful. Why I doubted everything, erected safety nets and put off trusting others. That wasn't paranoia or difficulty. I learned that by surviving without aid. That instinct kept Lily and me alive when we had nothing. I left the building after 10 minutes and drove home to our safe, roach-free flat, feeling grateful and frustrated at how hard it was. Lily sobbed into her pillow that night at being confused. Sat on the bed edge, I inquired what was confusing her. She wondered why she had to travel to Benjamin's hotel instead of his coming to our place. It was strange having 2 locations and not knowing which was home. Watching her struggle to understand something at her age hurt my chest. I took her favorite plush rabbit from the shelf, and told her we would make a routine for between residences. She and I practiced in her room. The bunny went in her little backpack first. We sang the ABCs while she put on her shoes. Her 3 embraces and my 3 kisses preceded her departure. We'd reverse everything when she got home. She stopped weeping and made me rehearse it 5 times before she remembered. By the end, she laughed when I pretended to forget the letter after M. I tucked her up and promised to repeat the process every time to make her feel safe no matter where we were. Victoria Clark's office hosted the mediation follow-up on Tuesday morning. Mother arrived 10 minutes early and sat in waiting area with folder on lap. Victoria contacted us again and we sat in the same seats, same distance apart. My mother took 3 handwritten papers from her folder. Victorian requested her read them aloud. My mother's voice trembled as she listed her actions, including pushing me out with 2 hours' notice when I was 18 and pregnant. Changing the locks to prevent return. Disregarding Rachel's appeals for help getting me into a shelter and telling my family I'd become a stripper instead of acknowledging I was homeless. Never attending Lily's birth hospital, even if Rachel told her. Living 25 minutes away for 4 years without checking on us. The list included 2 pages. Reading made her cry. But she didn't apologize or explain. After finishing, she glanced at me and apologized for each mistake. I could see she still wanted to justify herself, but it was more honest than her previous apologies. I sat there letting the words sink without trying to comfort her or assure her everything was okay. I told her this was a first step, not absolution, and that she needed to keep proving herself via acts after a lengthy quiet. Victoria noted and planned our next check-in for a month. My restaurant manager and I met the next day at lunchtime. I stated that I needed to change my schedule to be home for Lily's nighttime ritual when Benjamin wasn't visiting. We reviewed the staff calendar on his iPad. Instead of 2 nighttime shifts each week, I'd work hectic noon shifts. Lunch shifts paid better due to increased table turnover and more steady business lunch tips. After 3 years of reliability, he gave me first dibs on the calendar and preferred to work with me rather than lose me to another restaurant. I thanked him and felt relieved that all was coming together. Slowly adding logistical breezes made the situation feel more solid and less like it may collapse at any time. Benjamin and I wrote Lily's school statement for 2 hours at a coffee shop. We kept things straightforward. Lily's father was found after a long search. We started co-parenting. Both parents asked that issues and concerns be addressed privately rather than with other parents or staff. We wanted Lily to be supported without being judged or gossiped about. The principal phoned me that afternoon after Benjamin sent it. She thanked us for being proactive and promised to brief Lily's teacher and front office workers discreetly. They'd record pickup authorization in the system and direct questions to us. She said they'd check for Lily's struggles and notify us promptly. I hung up feeling like we'd spared her some drama. Catherine Wilson called Friday afternoon. She stated she had read all the mediation papers and my mother's treatment documents and felt comfortable approving a brief supervised meeting between us before contacting Lily. The mediation office would host the meeting with Victoria Clark for a safe, impartial environment. Luke would be unaffected if things went wrong since she wouldn't know. Next steps might be considered if everything went well. We booked the meeting on Thursday after I agreed. The next week, I was apprehensive and practiced what I wanted to say, writing and marking out things to prepare for a discussion I didn't know how to have. My monitored meeting was harder than imagined. I sat across from my mother in Victoria Clark's office with Kleenex on the table. Victoria explained the regulations, and had my mother read her written apologies. Longer than what she read at mediation, it detailed all 4 years. She described specific occasions she'd denied aid, lied to relatives, and put her pride before my survival. She described receiving Rachel's call that I'd given delivery alone and not going to the hospital. 2 years later, she saw Lily's image for the first time and felt nothing because she believed I deserved it. Though her voice cracked several times, she read, she finished, put the papers down, and sobbed without defending herself. Just sat there and let the words drop. Stopped denying my rage and hurt to make her feel better. After many minutes, I informed her I heard her. I wasn't ready to forgive her. Though it wasn't okay, I realized that she'd written and read it honestly without justifications. Victoria Clark inquired what my mother should do for me. I stated constant treatment, respect for my boundaries, and time to prove she changed. The rest of the session was devoted negotiating restricted contact. Not allowed overnight visits with Lily till further notice. No unsupervised time with her for 6 months. Lily's health reviewed every 3 months. Whether my mother continued therapy or not, she might be named Grandma, but with tight limitations that could be revoked if she broke any lines. My mother accepted everything without negotiation. She acknowledged she had broken my trust and that it would take years to restore it. Victoria Clark recorded our agreement and promised a written report within 2 days. I left the workplace fatigued but felt like the limits were now clear and fair. My mother would influence Lily, but only when she'd shown herself trustworthy via continuous activity. I made a park party list on Tuesday night for Lily's birthday, 3 weeks away. Balloons, paper plates, a grocery store sheet cake, and maybe tag or duck duck goose. Benjamin spotted my notes on the kitchen table when he dropped off Samantha Harper's papers that night. I told him about the park, how Lily's kindergarten friends would come, and how we'd make it simple and pleasant. He paused, then recommended hiring a princess party business or renting a site with activities. I thanked him but declined since 6-year-olds didn't require sophisticated entertainment and Lily would rather run around with her pals eating cake. He appeared disappointed but asked how he could assist. I assigned him decorations and games with a $60 budget and a list of dollar store things. The next day he emailed me photographs of streamers and balloons he'd chosen, wondering if the colors matched. It felt normal to a greater extent than any pricey celebration. My mother called 2 days later while I folded clothes. She suggested Lily visit Switzerland for her birthday, maybe see the Alps, and stay at a family hotel. I paused mid-fold and informed her we were focused on modest local visits and not traveling internationally. She gently objected, stating Lily would learn and the family wanted to meet her. I reiterated that restoring trust required respecting limits without arguing. After quieting down, she stated she understood. No guilt, no manipulation, just acceptance. After hanging up, I was astonished and hopeful that the therapy was working. Samantha Harper had a Friday afternoon office meeting to settle things legally. Benjamin and I arrived to find her conference table covered in papers. Our parenting plan and schedule, child support trust structure, and court filing paperwork. We spent 2 hours reviewing each piece to ensure we understood what we signed. Samantha outlined the trust's monthly payments and how I'd handle them with a financial advisor. She had scheduled an appointment for me with a person who taught individuals who suddenly made money how to budget and invest, instead of just consuming. The advisor gave me a business card with her name. First meeting next Tuesday. Benjamin signed everything without hesitation, and I signed with a shake because it seemed so official and permanent. Samantha said she'd file the parenting plan with the court by Monday and we'd have co-parent status within weeks. After leaving that office, I felt like the ground was finally firm. Benjamin invited me to get coffee and speak, so we walked to a quiet location a few blocks away. He looked uneasy, putting sugar into his espresso, and said his father, Victor Foster, had been phoning him every other day about settling down. His father continued implying that Lily's existence would legitimate things and change the family position, making me a good match. Benjamin swiftly added that he'd informed his father, that romance wasn't on the table just now, and maybe never. We wanted to be steady co-parents first, not an arranged partnership to please his family. He said maintaining a respectful distance was more important than any grand gesture or relationship, and that proving we could work together for Lily was what mattered. I thanked him for being honest and agreed, relieved that we were on the same page. Lily's stability was more important than fairy tale endings. The next week, Victoria Clark sent me an update email saying my mother had completed 3 therapy sessions and the therapist noted she was engaged seriously with the work. She noted that real change took months or years, not weeks, but the initial signs were encouraging. I read it twice, feeling my automatic skepticism soften into conditional trust. It was hard to believe she'd changed yet, but I could watch her actions to see if they stayed consistent. Words were easy, but showing up to therapy every week and respecting boundaries without complaint was harder. The first supervised visit was on a Wednesday afternoon at a downtown family center. I drove Lily there and walked her inside, where a staff member met us in the lobby. My mother was already in the visit room, sitting at a small table with coloring books and crayons. I stayed in the building, but sitting in the waiting area with a book I couldn't focus on. The staff member had told my mother the rules. No gifts, no promises about future visits, no asking Lily to keep secrets, just simple conversation and activities. After an hour, Lily emerged with a colored butterfly picture. My mother followed behind, keeping a safe distance. She thanked the staff member and left through the side exit as agreed. Lily was quiet in the car, so I didn't push her to talk. When we got home, I made her a snack and sat with her at the kitchen table, asking how she felt about seeing her grandmother. Lily said Grandma was nice but sad, and they'd colored and talked about favorite animals. She wasn't sure if she wanted to see her again soon, maybe in a while, but not next week. I told her that was okay, that she got to decide the pace and nobody would force anything. Her mixed feelings made sense, and I was proud of her for being honest about them. We agreed to think about it and talked to the therapist at our next appointment before Benjamin arrived early to help me set up Lily's birthday party at the park near our apartment on a sunny Saturday morning. Kids started arriving around 10 o'clock, with parents dropping them off with wrapped presents and promises to pick them up by noon. Lily ran around with her friends playing tag and laughing so hard she got hiccups. We played musical chairs and red light green light, then brought out the cake with its messy grocery store frosting and 6 candles. Everyone sang and Lily blew them out in one breath, beaming. My mother arrived at 11 for her supervised 30-minute window, quietly watching from the pavilion edge. At the end of her visit, she said goodbye to Lily without fuss and strolled back to her car, departing precisely when she was meant to. I felt something unexpected as I watched her go. The next Tuesday, Rachel met me for lunch at a sandwich shop halfway between our apartments. She looked more relaxed than I'd seen her in years. Over Turkey Club. She told me she wouldn't listen to complaints about me anymore and that if Mom wanted to talk about me, she could talk to her therapist. Mom initially resisted, but Rachel held firm, and now their conversations were shorter but less toxic. We talked about what it meant to be sisters instead of just 2 people who survived the same difficult mother, making plans to hang out more often and build our own It was nice to have an ally who understood where I was and didn't ask me to forgive too quickly. The community college sent my acceptance letter for spring semester classes on Thursday. I'd applied weeks earlier but hadn't believed it would happen. Business fundamentals, English composition, and intro to accounting. The timetable fit Lily's kindergarten hours and Benjamin's visit days, and I no longer had to choose between textbooks and groceries. I could study instead of working extra shifts. Sitting at my kitchen table with that acceptance letter, I thought about the future I'd always wanted for Lily and myself, the one I'd been building toward for 4 years of hell and survival. It was finally becoming real because I'd fought for it and now had the support to make it happen. For the first time in 6 years, the ground felt solid under my feet, and I was ready to keep moving forward. On Tuesday morning, Benjamin went for Switzerland, and Lily stood at the window watching his car drive down the street, her palm on the glass. We'd set up the video call schedule, marking specific times on her calendar with stickers she chose. At bedtime, she showed him her room on the tablet, pointed at her toys, and talked about kindergarten. He listened carefully and asked questions, and when we hung up, she counted the days until his next visit using the stickers we'd stuck on the wall calendar. The system worked better than I expected, giving her something concrete to track instead of just waiting and wondering. She knew when to expect him, which made the distance easier, made his absence manageable instead of scary. My mother went to therapy every week and I got attendance confirmations from her counselor as required. We scheduled monthly supervised visits with checkpoints every 3 months to see if Lily was doing well. The pace was slow, but that was intentional to put Lily's safety first. She arrived on time for visits, followed the rules without fighting, and didn't try to get more access. I was surprised by her lack of drama, as I expected her to test boundaries or make demands. Instead, she seemed to understand that this was her only path back and she needed to walk it carefully. Rachel started meeting me for coffee every other week, and we talked about things other than our mother, building our own relationship. One night, after Lily fell asleep, I sat in our living room with the lights off, thinking. The apartment was quiet and safe. No comparison to those first nights in the shelter when Lily slept in a dresser drawer because I couldn't afford a crib. I thought about the roaches in our old studio, the customers who grabbed my ass for $3 tips, and walking 4 miles to work in the dark. We needed to remember where we'd been, so I never took this stability for granted. Gratitude and caution lived in my chest, both equally real and necessary. Our new normal was messy, structured, and completely ours. Lily had 2 respectful parents who coordinated schedules and put her needs first even when it was hard. She had a grandmother who earned her way back in with strict boundaries and regular checkpoints. An aunt who was becoming a real friend instead of a scared sister. And a mother who endured hell and built something solid, who knew how much it cost to get here. Nobody was flawless, but everyone was better off.
I worked 80 hours a week, paid my parents half. Then I found casino receipts in their car while begging to afford my daughter's chemo. When I was in junior high, my physics teacher impregnated me. He convinced me that we were in love and would tour the world. But the day I approached him with the 2 pink lines, he left the school and never returned. And my parents, despite accepting a $100,000 settlement from the school in exchange for signing a contract, said that I was banned from disclosing this information. Fast forward 9 years, and I'm working as a nurse during the day and cleaning offices at night to make ends meet. Every month I handed over about half of my paycheck to my parents, who claimed they couldn't afford to live on their pensions due to rent, utilities, groceries, medical co-pays, and other expenses. Meanwhile, I was skipping meals so that my 8-year-old daughter Lila could eat. Speaking of Lila, she got terribly sick. The doctor diagnosed her with a severe form of leukemia that required rapid treatment. Even with insurance, the drug alone would cost hundreds of dollars every month. I went to my parents to explain the problem. I asked if they might temporarily cut the amount I was sending them so that I could afford Lila's treatment. That's when they dropped the bombshell. They sat me down in their living room with cold, calculating eyes and informed me that if I cut their support by even $1, they would inform Lila and her entire extended family about her father. They'd reveal everything about what happened to me during high school. They claimed they had safeguarded my reputation as a word for years, and I owed them for their silence. I totally broke down. The notion of Lila discovering that her father was my teacher and had abandoned us was heartbreaking. In my family, if people discovered I had been deceived and used as a youngster, I would be shamed and possibly excommunicated. So I took out a payday loan. I maxed up my credit cards. I borrowed against my car to keep paying my parents while trying to cover Lila's medical expenses. But that wasn't enough. Lila's condition deteriorated as a result of the medicine delays. She was continually missing school and losing weight. I was working 80 hours a week with little sleep. My parents constantly asked for more money, stating that their expenses are increasing. They even suggested I take out a second mortgage on my house. Lila fell at school one night and needed to be admitted to the hospital. While I was sitting in the hospital waiting area, a social worker began questioning why Lila's therapy was irregular. I was so fatigued and stressed that I nearly broke down right there. That's when I discovered the receipts. I borrowed my folks' car to get to the hospital after mine broke down. And while cleaning out some trash, I discovered meal receipts from upscale restaurants, casino parking stubs, and movie tickets, all from the previous month, when they claimed they couldn't afford food. I began an investigation. I followed them one afternoon and witnessed them enter a casino. I documented everything, even the gaming and shopping visits. They were living lavishly on my money while my kid was dying. But when I challenged them with the proof, they made no attempt to refute it. Instead, they escalated the blackmail. They threatened to contact child services and denounce me as an unfit mother. They threatened to revoke my nursing license by stating that I was unstable. They demanded that I turn over the deed to my house, or they would ruin me utterly. That's when I felt something shatter inside. I realized they had been systematically ruining my life for years. They had taken money intended to pay for my suffering and used it to support their lifestyle. Then they spent nearly a decade using the same trauma to manipulate me. So I began recording our discussions. I acquired all of the evidence of their financial misconduct. I couldn't afford a lawyer, so I became a professional online detective and discovered that what they were doing to me was unlawful. Financial exploitation, extortion, and all that. Then I scheduled a family gathering. I invited all of my aunts, uncles, and cousins who had spent years praising my parents for being such wonderful grandparents while criticizing me for accepting their assistance. I played the recordings during the family meeting. I displayed the receipts. I told how they had been diverting money intended for Lila's medical treatment to fuel their gambling habit. And then I told them the truth about the school settlement. My parents were paid $100,000 to stay quiet about a teacher who had raped their daughter. They had concealed and wasted money while forcing their daughter to labor herself to the bone to support them. The room became utterly silent. My Aunt Mary Ann was the first to speak. She simply shook her head and said no, again and over. My Uncle Gerald rose up and walked away without saying anything. My cousin Nina began crying. The silence seemed to last for hours. Yet it was most likely only minutes. Then my mother started chatting. She claimed I was lying. She suggested I was having a mental breakdown due to stress. She informed everyone that I had recently been acting unpredictable and making up things. My father quickly backed her up. He stated they'd been concerned about me for months. He said that I had neglected Lila and they were considering contacting child services themselves. I took out my phone and played another recording. It was just 2 days ago that they threatened to remove my nursing license. My mother's voice was clear, ordering me to keep paying, or she'd make sure I never worked in healthcare again. Despite the fact that the evidence was right in front of me, some of my relatives began to react differently. My Aunt Elaine suggested that I was just stressed and misunderstood things. My Uncle Malcolm recommended we take a break and discuss things later. I could see it happen. Years of my parents being the ideal grandparents were working against me. They had amassed a lot of goodwill, but I was always the struggling single mother who needed assistance. My cousin Tessa was the only person who seemed to entirely believe me. She came up and placed her hand on my shoulder. She murmured that she had always wondered where my parents obtained their money, but the majority of the family was already siding with them. They were too astonished to understand what I was telling them. Or perhaps they simply refused to believe it. My mother started crying, big dramatic cries. She stated she couldn't believe her own daughter would assault her in this way. She stated that all they had ever done was try to help me. My father wrapped his arm around her and stared at me. He called me ungrateful and agitated. The meeting concluded with nothing resolved. Half of the family left without saying goodbye to me. The other half murmured about wanting some time to consider. Only Tessa remained behind. She claimed she believed me and would help in any way she could, but I could sense she was overwhelmed by everything. I returned home that night feeling worse than before. I had hoped that the truth would set me free, but it appeared that I had just made things worse. Leela was still at the hospital. I still didn't have the money for her therapy, and my parents were about to retaliate. I did not have to wait long. The next morning, I received a call from my hospital supervisor. She stated that they had received a troubling report about me. Someone had called and claimed I was stealing drugs and exhibiting signs of mental instability. I recognized my parents right away. My supervisor informed me that I would need to take a leave of absence while they investigated. My main source of income was suddenly gone. I attempted to explain, but she stated it was protocol. Any accusations needed to be investigated. She appeared compassionate, but her hands were tied. I hung up and sat in shock. Without my nursing work, I couldn't afford to pay our rent, let alone Lila's treatment. I called the cleaning firm to ask if I could pick up additional shifts, but they stated they were fully staffed. I spent the remainder of the day applying for jobs online, but I realized it was worthless. Any background check would reveal that I was under investigation by my prior company. My parents had played their cards masterfully. That afternoon, I went to visit Lila in the hospital. She seemed so little in that bed. She asked when she might return home. I told her soon, while trying not to cry. The doctor called me aside and told me they needed to talk about her treatment plan. He claimed the delays were causing issues. He inquired whether there were any financial issues they should be aware of. I wanted to tell him everything, but instead I nodded and said I'd figure it out. On my way out, I came across my folks in the hospital lobby. They were there to visit Lila and play the role of concerned grandparents. My mother smiled at me coldly. She asked if I had reconsidered their offer for the house. I didn't respond. I just walked by them and out to my car, but I could hear my father telling a nurse how concerned they were about me and how I appeared to be falling apart under the stress. They had already laid the framework to make me appear unstable. That night, Tessa called. She explained that she had been thinking and wanted to help. She offered to lend me some money, but I was aware she didn't have much. She was a single mother who worked as a teacher. I thanked her but said no. This was not her struggle, yet she insisted on contributing in some way. She mentioned that she had started browsing through old family photos and documents. She thought she might be able to locate evidence to back up my story. I didn't have high hopes, but I admired her efforts. The following few days were a blur. I sold everything I could: my jewelry, my television, and some furniture. It was not nearly enough. Lila needed to begin her next round of treatment quickly, but I couldn't afford it. I visited the hospital billing department and pleaded for more time. They established a payment plan, but stated that therapy could not proceed without at least a half payment up front. I had no choice. I returned to my parents. I discovered them at home, sitting in the living room as if nothing had occurred. I informed them that if Lila was not treated, she would die. I told them I'd do whatever they wanted as long as they allowed me to use the money to pay her medical bills. My mother gazed at me with great joy. She said that they had been thinking about my circumstances. She claimed they would help with Lila's treatment, but only if I publicly apologized to the family for lying about them and signed over my house to them right now. The house was all Lila and I had. It was our security. But what options did I have? I agreed to the terms. My father pulled out documents that he had already prepared. As I signed, my mother contacted numerous relatives on speakerphone. She had me apologize for my meltdown during the family meeting. She forced me to admit that I was confused and stressed, and that I had told horrible lies about my beloved parents. Each word felt like poison in my tongue, but I said them all. For Lila. After I finished degrading myself, they gave me a check for just one treatment. They promised me more after I moved out of the house. They wanted me out within 30 days. I accepted the check and departed. I paid the hospital that afternoon, and Lila had treatment that evening, but I knew it was only the beginning. My parents had won this round. They had turned the majority of my family against me, cost me my job, and were now stealing my home. But at least Lila would survive. That was all that mattered. Tessa called that night, thrilled. She stated that she had discovered something interesting in old family files. She wanted to meet in person to show me. We decided to meet the next day in a coffee shop. I didn't dare to hope, but perhaps she'd discovered something that could help. Perhaps there was a way to fight back. But I knew my parents were not going to stop. They had too much to lose now. They had revealed their true colors, and they would do anything to maintain their secret. The conflict between us has just recently begun. I met Tessa at the coffee shop the following morning. The area was virtually empty, with only a few early risers slumped over their laptops. She had a manila folder full of papers pressed against her chest like a shield. Her gaze flashed around the room, scanning each face before settling on me. She slid into the booth across from me, speaking quietly as she pushed the folder across the cracked wooden table. Inside were bank statements from years ago, the paper yellowed along the edges, yet the figures remained clear. My parents' bank statements from just after the settlement. Tessa told quietly how she discovered them in her mother's attic while helping clean out old crates. Apparently, my Aunt Marianne assisted my parents with their taxes that year, back when everyone trusted them. The papers clearly indicated the $100,000 deposit, which was made barely 2 weeks after I turned 18. But more significantly, they revealed where the money went. Within 6 months, practically everything was gone. Gambling withdrawals at a casino 40 minutes away, shopping sprees at high-end department stores, and a luxury cruise to the Caribbean. They had spent my settlement money before I even graduated from high school. I glanced at the documents, feeling sick in my stomach. The coffee I had ordered sat there, becoming cold as I traced the transactions with my finger. All these years, they made me feel terrible for requiring assistance, calling me ungrateful when I struggled to pay payments. But they had squandered money that was intended to go toward my future, for my trauma, the therapy I never received, and the schooling I had to postpone. Tessa claimed there was more. She took out another document and carefully handled it as if it were evidence at a murder scene. It was a letter from the school's lawyer addressed to my parents. Even after so many years, the official letterhead remained pristine. It described the settlement provisions in plain legal language. The funds were set aside expressly for my care, education, and future requirements. My parents broke the deal by spending money on themselves. I photographed everything with my phone, my hands trembling slightly as I attempted to capture clear photographs in the dim coffee shop illumination. Finally, I had tangible evidence. Not just of their current extortion, but also of their previous betrayal. Tessa promised to keep the originals safe in a safety deposit box that her mother was unaware of. She also stated that her mother, Marianne, was beginning to have questions about my parents' narrative. Marianne apparently noted numerous anomalies in what they were stating, such as dates that did not match and bills they claimed to have but did not exist. They were adding up. I thanked Tessa and went home to pack, my mind racing from the new information. I had fewer than 30 days to find a new home for Lila and me, and the rental market in our neighborhood was quite competitive. But first, I needed to figure out how to strategically apply this new information. I couldn't simply call another family gathering. My parents had already poisoned the well, turning the majority of the relatives against me with their lies. I needed a different approach, something they wouldn't expect. That afternoon, I received a call from the hospital billing department. The woman on the phone seemed regretful yet strong. They claimed there was an issue with the check my parents handed me. It had bounced. The payment was refused, and Lila's therapy was once again put on hold. I felt my heart plummet to my stomach. I dialed my folks immediately, my fingers fumbling with the phone. On the third ring, my mother answered and said, "It must be a bank error." She said they'd correct it tomorrow, maybe the next day. But I could hear the smugness in her voice, the barely veiled joy. This was deliberate. They were punishing me for not signing over the house quickly enough. I drove to their house and beat on the door till my knuckles ached. My father answered, blocking the doorway with his body. He wouldn't let me inside, said I was being crazy and histrionic as usual. He threatened that if I didn't calm down, he would contact the police and report me for harassment. I told him Lila required the treatment and that without it, every day was a struggle. He simply shrugged, as if we were talking about the weather, and closed the door in my face. I heard the locks turn, shutting me out of the house that I had helped pay for. I sat in my car, quivering with wrath, and my entire body trembling. They were using my daughter's life as a negotiating chip, toying with a sick child's health. I called Tessa and informed her what had happened, attempting to maintain a steady voice. She stated that she will speak with her mother immediately. Maybe Marianne might persuade my parents to put a stop to this madness. But I knew it would not work. My parents were too far gone, fixated on their own power. They prioritized control over their granddaughter's life. That night, I was unable to sleep. I kept thinking about those bank records, seeing the numbers in my head, about how they had stolen my future and were now taking Lila's. The cruise they took cost more than Lila's entire treatment regimen. By dawn, I'd made a decision. If they wanted to play dirty, I would too. I started by calling every relative who had attended the family meeting. I spoke in a concerned, rather than furious tone. I didn't accuse my parents explicitly. Instead, I expressed my concern for them. I noted that, despite all of my assistance, they appeared to be experiencing financial difficulties. I indicated that they might have a gambling issue and required an intervention. After all, I'd seen them at the casino so many times. The gossip mill began buzzing instantly. My Aunt Elaine contacted my Aunt Marianne within an hour. Marianne mentioned discovering some old financial paperwork that troubled her. Soon half the family was discussing my parents' potential gambling addiction. It wasn't exactly what I said at the meeting, but it was close enough to get folks thinking. My parents attempted damage management, but the seed had been planted. Once doubt seeps in, it's difficult to overcome. Then I took it one step farther. I called the casino where I'd photographed them. I expressed concern about my elderly folks' gambling issue. I inquired if there was any way to determine how much they had spent there. Due to privacy rules, the casino was unable to provide specifics, but they did confirm that my parents were regular clients, very regular. The woman on the phone seemed concerned. I scheduled this conversation while my cousin Mason was visiting to check on Lila. He overheard everything in the kitchen. Within 2 days, the family's narrative had changed substantially. Instead of thinking I was insane and ungrateful, folks were concerned about my parents' gambling habits. My mother called me, shouting so loudly that I had to hold the phone away from my ear. She claimed I was destroying their reputation with terrible lies. She threatened to tell Lila everything immediately and poison my daughter against me. I taped the call on my laptop. Then I played it for Tessa, who then performed it for her mother. Marianne eventually began to see the reality. The disguise was sliding, but my parents were not finished. They showed up at Lila's school the next day, attempting to check her out early. They told the staff they were taking her to a doctor's appointment that I had forgotten about. Luckily, the school followed the process and called me first. I went over, breaking many traffic regulations, and found them in the principal's office, telling a narrative about being concerned about grandparents who simply wanted to help. I had to show the main legal paperwork that proved I had sole custody. My parents left, but not before my mother hinted that it wasn't over. Her breath smelled like wine. At 10 a.m. that night, someone contacted Child Services and reported me for medical neglect. I recognized them before the social worker explained why she was there. The social worker arrived the next morning with a clipboard and a solemn expression. I had to show her all of Lila's medical records, including every checkup and prescription, and explain why some treatments were delayed. I couldn't tell her about the extortion, but I did mention money challenges and family issues. She appeared satisfied, but indicated that she would need to follow up. Another problem to add to my increasing list, another method they can harm us. Tessa called with an update while the social worker was still present. Her mother, Marianne, had challenged my parents about the previous bank statements. They had attempted to lie at first, then revised their narrative several times, but Marianne had the evidence right there in black and white. She told them she was aware of the settlement money. My parents had finally acknowledged spending money, claiming they needed cash for bills and medical expenditures. Marianne did not buy it. She knew they had been healthy back then. She was now beginning to see who they truly were beneath the loving parent facade. The following day, I received an unexpected call that made my stomach drop. It was from my previous cleaning business. They stated that they had gotten several complaints against me from a client. The client claimed I took pricey office equipment after my shifts. I understood immediately that my folks were behind it. They were attempting to destroy any chances I had of working. The employer stated that they had to let me go pending an investigation, even though there was no proof they couldn't risk keeping me on. Company policy. I was again unemployed. I was running out of options quickly. I have no employment, am likely to lose my house, and Lila's treatment is on hold. I chose to take a chance. That night, I posted in a Facebook group for my local community. I did not name my parents, but I told my story. Single mother, sick child, extorted by family members who had previously stolen from me. I asked if anyone knew of any resources that could help. Within hours, the post spread throughout our little community. Hundreds of comments flooded in, some giving assistance and others recounting similar stories of family betrayal. My parents viewed the post within hours. They were infuriated. My father arrived at my residence at 11 p.m. and demanded that I take it down. I refused to open the door. He claimed I was embarrassing the family by airing dirty linen in public. I stated they were killing their granddaughter. He truly laughed, and the sound traveled through the door. He said Lila was all right, only a little sick, and that I was being theatrical as usual. That's when I understood they didn't really care if she died. They just worried about their reputation and power. They'd never loved us. I recorded him saying it all through the door. Then I updated my Facebook post with the audio. The community's response was swift and overwhelming. People were outraged. Some identified my parents based on the description. Others began putting together parts based on their own interactions. My parents' carefully manufactured reputation began to crumble, but they still had one card to play. The next morning, Lila awoke with a 103-degree temperature. She was deteriorating without therapy, her small body unable to fight anymore. I rushed her to the hospital while carrying her since she was too weak to walk. My folks arrived as I was shaking hands and completing paperwork. They had brought other family members along as witnesses. They announced publicly to everyone in the waiting room that I was refusing their assistance, that they had offered to pay for everything, but I was too proud and bitter. My Uncle Gerald backed them up. He claimed he had observed me decline their substantial offer. The other patients gazed at me with disapproval. I was too fatigued to fight. I just focused on Lila, holding her hand while she lay in the hospital bed. The doctor stated that she needed quick care or things would get critical. Her statistics were decreasing rapidly. I begged the billing department for aid and was willing to sign anything. This is when a stranger approached me. She claimed she had seen my Facebook post. She worked for a local organization that assisted families with medical expenses. She suggested they could cover Lila's treatment until we worked things out. I fell down in tears right there in the hospital, unable to stop them. My parents attempted to intercede. They informed the charity worker that I was dishonest and psychologically disturbed, but she had already done her study. She was aware of everything, including my job loss and the investigation. She also noted that other people had shared anecdotes about my parents. Apparently, they had a reputation for taking advantage of people, with modest loans that were never repaid and sob stories that did not match together. The charity approved Lila's therapy that day. The relief was profound. Lila improved instantly. The appropriate drugs made a significant effect. Her color improved within hours. But my parents hadn't finished. They began calling family to inform them I had publicly humiliated them. They claimed I was accepting charity rather than familial assistance out of malice. Some relatives believed them. Others were beginning to question their story. The family was split up into camps, and the Christmas season was approaching. Tessa's mother, Mary Ann, did something unexpected. She summoned her own family gathering. She stated that she had critical information to offer regarding the family's future. My parents attempted to reject it, but Mary Ann insisted. She promised to give the information even if they did not show up. They had no option but to attend. I was invited too, but I was terrified. The last time had not gone well. My hands trembled just thinking about it. Tessa convinced me to go. She said her mother had been conducting her own inquiry for weeks. She discovered more than just bank statements. So I went and brought Lila with me. She was still feeble, yet stable. I wanted the family to understand the consequences of their disregard. The gathering was held at Mary Ann's residence. The majority of the family showed up, inquisitive about what was going on. The tension in the room was palpable. Mary Ann began by displaying the bank statements on a projector that she had put up. She explained the settlement money, going over each transaction painstakingly. She then dropped a bomb. She had discovered emails, old ones between my parents from just after the settlement. They were deciding how to spend the money, arranging vacations and shopping trips, and laughing about winning the lottery, all while their teenage daughter was struggling with trauma. One email from my mother said I was young and would get over it. The room was silent. My parents tried to escape, but Mary Ann was not finished. She had also discovered records of their gambling losses spanning years and hundreds of thousands of dollars over the previous decade. Money that comes from me. Money that should have gone to Lila. She had phoned the casino and received printouts of their loyalty program status. They were VIP members with complimentary accommodations and meals. Then Mary Ann showed everyone my Facebook post and the community's response. She read comments from people my parents had borrowed money from but never paid back. Stories of manipulation and lies dating back years. She expressed regret for not having noticed it sooner. She apologized to me in front of everybody. She claimed the family had failed me and Lila. Her voice cracked as she spoke. My parents attempted to defend themselves, but the evidence proved overwhelming. My father blamed my mother for the gambling. My mother blamed him for the lies. They turned against each other right in front of everyone. Years of secrets were revealed, including how they had been broken prior to the settlement, how they had viewed it as their opportunity to live the life they desired, and how they justified it by claiming I was young and fine. My mother admitted that she never thought I would amount to anything. My cousin Nina began crying. She claimed she suspected something was wrong but didn't want to believe it. My uncle Malcolm approached my parents and said they were disgusting. One by one, family members turned away from them. The truth had finally been revealed, and it was uglier than everyone had expected. Nonetheless, my folks attempted one final trick. My mother glanced at Lila and said she was sorry she was sick. Then she looked at me and said, "If I had just been a better daughter, none of this would have happened." She said that by being selfish, I forced them to take drastic measures. She genuinely attempted to blame me for their misdeeds. That was when Lila spoke out. My quiet, sick little kid stared at her grandmother and remarked, "She's mean." She thought I was the best mother in the world, and worked tirelessly every day. She stated that she didn't want to see them anymore. Her voice was little, yet clear. The room erupted. Family members began shrieking at my parents, calling them monsters and claiming they were dead to the family. My parents eventually understood they had lost. They left Mary Ann's house amid a shout of denunciation, but I knew they would not give up so easily. They had lost their income and reputation. They would seek vengeance. They always had to have the final say. I was correct. The following day, they filed a complaint with the nursing board. They said I had mental health difficulties that rendered me unfit for practice. They produced statements claiming that I had threatened them and demonstrated signs of instability. It was their final attempt to end my career. But this time, I was prepared. I had recordings, witnesses, and a charitable organization eager to vouch for me. I'd learned to document everything. The investigation was difficult, but Tessa and Mary Ann testified on my behalf. The charity worker gave documentation of my parents' attempts to interfere with Lila's therapy. Even some of my other relatives wrote me letters of support. The nursing board discovered no proof of wrongdoing. My license was cleared, and I was able to return to work. My supervisor apologized and promptly offered me my job back, with a minor raise to compensate for the inconvenience. However, the harm to my parents was lasting and rapid. The word had spread quickly throughout our small community. Their buddies had stopped calling. Their church ordered them to leave after learning of the theft. After learning about Lila's position, the casino blacklisted them. They became pariahs overnight, all by their own doing. They called me multiple times, but I did not answer. They had nothing else to scare me with. Lila maintained her treatment without interruption. The charity covered everything when I recovered. Family members who had been standing by began to aid as well. Marianne handed me money. She said my parents had borrowed from her years ago. Nina offered to babysit so that I could work additional shifts. Tessa assisted me in finding a tiny apartment that was within our budget. It wasn't much, but it belonged to us and couldn't be taken away. The house situation was problematic because I had signed it over under pressure. Marianne's husband, Franklin, had retired as a real estate agent. He discovered flaws in the documentation that my parents had completed. They hadn't filed it properly in their haste to seize power. The transfer was not valid. I still owned my house. When my parents discovered it, they threatened to sue. But which lawyer would take their case? They had no money left and no credibility. The threat was empty. 3 months later, Lila was in remission. The doctor said that she had reacted nicely to continuous treatment. We celebrated with a modest party at our home. We were joined by family members who had supported us, as well as several Facebook friends. For the first time in years, I felt like we had a true support system. My folks were not invited. I heard they'd relocated to a little apartment across town. They were working minimum wage jobs and just squeaking by, just like they had put me through for years. Sometimes karma comes around. They attempted to reach Lila on her birthday. Send a card with money inside. I gave Lila a choice. She tossed it in the trash without opening it. She declared, "People who hurt others don't deserve forgiveness." Smart youngster. She probably acquired that from going through so much so young, but she was healing. We both were. Following the revelations, my parents' extended relatives effectively excommunicated them. They were not welcome at holidays or family gatherings. A few relatives felt sorry for them, but the majority decided they had brought it on themselves. Instead, the family rallied around Lila and me, offering us the help and support we deserved all along. It took almost losing everything to find what we truly needed, a family who cared about us. Sometimes I worry if my parents regret what they did, if they ever reflect on how different things could have been. But then I recall their frigid expressions the day they threatened me. Their eyes were filled with satisfaction, as they believed they had me trapped. No, they just regret getting caught. They regret losing both their cash cow and their reputation. They have no regrets about hurting their daughter and grandkids. People like this never do. But we got through them. Lila became healthy. I was able to resume my career. We kept our home and discovered who truly cared for us. The cost was great, but the freedom was worthwhile. No more threats, no more manipulation, and no more handing out money we sorely needed. Just Lila and myself, living our lives without the weight of their greed weighing us down. We were finally free. 6 months later, things were finally stabilized. Lila was doing well with her therapy and even began playing soccer again. I was back at work full-time and had even taken on some overtime shifts. We were catching up on payments, and I was able to buy food without first checking my bank balance. My parents tried one more thing. A lawyer sent me a letter stating that my parents were contesting the house paperwork. They claimed I had verbally committed to give them the house, and they expected me to keep that agreement. The letter was from a cheap lawyer who most likely took their case for a tiny fee. I was not even worried. I had Marianne's husband Franklin on my side, and he was quite knowledgeable about property law. He stated that their case was rubbish and would be disposed of promptly. But my folks were desperate. They began showing up. First, they cornered me in the produce area of the supermarket store. My mother began to cry as she described how they were struggling. My father claimed I had ruined their lives due to a misunderstanding. I just walked away. They followed me through the store until security forced them to leave. Then they showed up to Lila's school again. This time, the principal contacted the police. They were warned against trespassing. Tessa called me one afternoon to share some news. She had been to the bank and overheard something unusual. My parents were trying to acquire a loan with my house as collateral. They told the bank they had ownership documentation. When they were unable to produce sufficient papers, the bank clerk shut them down, indicating that they were becoming desperate. They were running out of cash and options. I chose to be proactive this time. I went to the police station to submit a report on the harassment. The police stated that there wasn't much they could do without threats of violence, but he advised me to document everything and consider a restraining order if the situation progressed. I began carrying a little notebook everywhere. Every time I saw them or attempted to contact them, I recorded the date and time in my notebook. The family was still divided over my parents. My Aunt Elaine felt sorry for them despite everything. She claimed they were older and had made mistakes. She attempted to persuade me to help them a little. I reminded her about Lila in the hospital, the bounced check, and years of extortion. She stopped asking after that, but I suspected she was giving them money on the side. That was her decision. My parents' lawyer has sent another letter. This time they claimed emotional discomfort. They claimed I turned the family against them and tarnished their reputation. They sought damages. Franklin laughed when he read it. He described it as the most absurd thing he had ever seen. He responded back, basically urging them to stop wasting everyone's time. He also mentioned that we have documented their extortion and thievery. Following that, the letters stopped. However, my parents found other methods to irritate us. They spread the story that I was withholding Lila from them, out of spite. They told everybody who would listen that they only wanted to see their grandchild. Some people who did not know the full story believed them. I began receiving messages on Facebook from strangers telling me to forgive my parents, that family was vital, and that harboring grudges was bad. I blocked them all. Lila inquired about her grandparents one day. She wanted to know why they were being so cruel. I kept things simple. I said to her, "Sometimes people care more about money than family. Sometimes people make bad choices and hurt others." She nodded as if she understood. Then she inquired whether they would ever be polite. I told her I did not think so. She appeared content with her response. Children are resilient. My parents attempted to go through other relatives next. They persuaded my Uncle Gerald to call me. He stated that they were sorry and wanted to make amends. He claimed they realized they were mistaken. I asked if they were willing to repay the money they had stolen. He became quiet. Then he stated that it was in the past and we should move on. I hung up. They were not sorry. They didn't have any money. Tessa's mother, Mary Ann, had become like a genuine mother to me. She asked us over for supper every Sunday. She assisted with Lila when I had to work late. She even attended Lila's school festivities. One day she informed me that she had written to my parents against her will. She stated that after what they did, they were dead to her. She was leaving everything to her children and grandchildren, which included Lila and me. She told me that, and it made me cry. The harassment continued in tiny ways. Hang-up calls from unfamiliar numbers, my parents sitting in their car outside my workplace and following me to the grocery store but keeping just far enough away. They were attempting to frighten me without actually doing anything criminal. I kept documenting everything. My notebook was growing full. The cops claimed it was still insufficient for a restraining order. They wanted evidence of threats. Then they committed a mistake. My mother left a voicemail one night after drinking too much. She stated that I would regret wrecking their lives. She said karma will get me. She said she wished Lila got sick again so I could understand how it felt to suffer. She really stated that she wanted my daughter to suffer. I quickly saved that voicemail and made many copies. That was the exact threat I needed. The restraining order was granted within a week. My parents were told to stay 500 feet away from Lila and I. There is no contact of any kind. There is no third-party contact either. If they broke it, they'd be arrested. The judge was appalled when he heard the voicemail. He described threatening a youngster as reprehensible. My parents did not even show up to contest it. They understood they'd made a mistake. With the restraining order in place, life became more tranquil. No more harassing. No more showing up at random locations. No more letters from lawyers. They were legally obligated to leave us alone. Lila noticed the difference right away. She claimed it felt safer now. She was correct. We could travel there without looking back. We could relax in our own home without worrying about unexpected visitors. I learned about my parents through the family grapevine. They were working at a fast food restaurant and living in a studio apartment on the wrong side of town. The car had been repossessed. They were going through the same thing I had been through for years. The difference was that I was young and had a sick child. They were simply suffering the repercussions of their own avarice. I did not feel sad for them. Lila's health continued to improve. She was gaining weight and feeling more energetic. Her doctors were astounded by her progress. She was even able to return to school full-time. She got good marks and met new acquaintances. She joined the art group and learned that she enjoyed painting. It was incredible to see her act like a normal child again. That was all I wanted, for her to be healthy and happy. The charity that supported us invited me to speak at their fundraiser. I was worried, but consented. I told a room full of donors about how their support practically saved my daughter's life, how the family had abandoned us, but strangers had stepped forward. Several folks cried as I spoke. They raised more money that night than they had in prior years. The director stated that my experience had motivated others to give. My nursing career was going as well as ever. My supervisor recommended that I be promoted to charge nurse. It came with better hours and more pay. I could finally quit working extra hours simply to live. I could be home for dinner with Lila, assist her with her homework, and watch movies together. All of the regular mom things I had missed for so long. We were creating the life that we deserved. Marianne planned Lila a lavish birthday celebration that year. The entire family arrived, with the exception of my parents. Lila was the center of attention and enjoyed every minute. She received gifts, played games, and ate too much cake. She said it was the finest birthday ever. As I watched her giggle with her cousins, I understood that this was the family we had always needed. People who genuinely loved us. I ran into my father at the pharmacy a few months later. He looked terrible, skinny, gray, and exhausted. He began to approach me but noticed my hand moving to my phone. He remembered the restraining order. He just stood there, looking sad. For a split second, I almost felt awful. Then I remembered Lila in the hospital. The bounced check, the threats, the voicemail, and wanting she would become sick again. I passed past him without speaking. My mother attempted one final manipulation. She wrote a letter to Lila's school, expressing her concern for her granddaughter's welfare. She accused me of being an unsuitable mother who failed to provide Lila with critical medical treatment. The school needed to investigate, but they had all of Lila's medical data. They could see that she was healthy and prospering. The principal personally called me to apologize for the inconvenience. He claimed they had to follow up on all concerns, but he could see it was unfounded. That letter breached the restraining order because it was a third-party contact regarding us. I filed a police report right away. My parents were detained in their flat. My mother cried and claimed she missed her granddaughter. My father chastised her for sending the letter. They turned against each other in front of the cops. Both were accused of breaking the order. They spent one night in jail and were sentenced to probation. One more violation, and they'd be in real time. Following the arrest, they came to a complete halt. Perhaps reality had finally set in. Perhaps they realized I wasn't the weak teenage girl they'd been controlling for so long. Maybe they were simply too fatigued to continue fighting. Whatever the reason, we did not hear from them again. The silence was amazing. Lila and I could finally live our lives free of dread and conflict. The extended family adjusted to a new normal. My parents were not acknowledged during parties. It was as if they never existed. A few relatives maintained communication with them, but kept it separate. Nobody pressed me to forgive them anymore. They had witnessed what my parents were capable of. They saw why reconciliation was impossible. Some issues cannot be resolved with an apology. Lila once inquired if I was saddened about my parents. I told her the truth. I was unhappy because I wished I had parents who would have protected me and loved Lila. But I wasn't sorry about losing my actual parents. They have been harming us for years. Sometimes you have to let go of poisonous people, even if they are relatives. She comprehended in the way that an 8-year-old would. We kept the house and made it genuinely ours by painting Lila's room purple because it was her favorite color and displaying images of our real family. Marianne, Tessa, Nina, and everyone who had contributed. That was our family now. The folks who stepped up when things became tough. Who trusted us when the reality was ugly. Who contributed without expecting anything in return. Sometimes I think about the teacher who started everything. I wonder whether he ever considers the devastation he created. But mostly I don't. He's not worth your mental energy. My parents thought they had a choice. They could have utilized the money to help me heal, to provide therapy and assistance. Instead, they took everything for themselves and spent years punishing me for their actions. It's more difficult to let go. But we made it through it all. Lila was healthy. I had a good job. We had a house and a real family. The price was heavy, but we eventually won. My parents were enjoying the life they had imposed on me, while we were flourishing. There is some justice in it. They'd played silly games and won stupid rewards, as Reddit would say. Meanwhile, Lila and I had gained our freedom. Looking back, I'm grateful in an unusual manner. If my parents hadn't pushed so hard, I might have spent my entire life under their control, giving them money while Lila and I suffered, certain that I owed them for their quiet. Their greed eventually emancipated us. They had revealed who they truly were, and given me the courage to fight back. Now Lila and I could construct our lives without them. That is truly the end of the narrative. There is no spectacular final confrontation or heartbreaking reconciliation, simply life without them. Lila is well and joyful. I was working in a job I really like, a family that genuinely cared for us, and 2 persons who had learnt they would never be accepted in our life again. Sometimes the best form of vengeance is simply living well. We were living quite well. After her affair plan collapsed, she tried to reconcile. I played along, then used her messages in court to win full custody and lock her down. I'm 35, she's 32, and we live in Ohio, where I work as a network administrator for a mid-sized company and make a nice salary of around $75,000. Emily worked part-time at a dentist office until about 2 years ago, when she wanted to remain at home with Liam full-time, which I supported because childcare costs were eating up the majority of her money anyway, and we could get by on my salary. Everything appeared normal until around 6 months ago, when Emily began acting strangely. It wasn't a big change in which she became a completely different person, but rather a series of small changes. She was always on her phone, which was not odd given that everyone is on their phone, but when I went into the room, she would flip it face down or take it with her to the restroom. She began staying up longer, stating that she was watching Netflix or reading web articles. But whenever I glanced over, she immediately switched screens. She also mentioned that she felt like she was losing herself in parenting and marriage, which I understand because being a stay-at-home parent is exhausting, and I told her that we could look into getting her some time for hobbies, or that she could return to work part-time if she wanted. The truth is, I don't jump to conclusions or become suspicious easily. I've always been honest about difficulties, and I felt if something was seriously wrong, we'd talk about it like adults. But Emily continued giving me vague replies about needing time to reflect and figure out what she wanted out of life. I recommended marriage counseling, but she said maybe later. She just needed time to process her emotions first. Then, approximately 4 months ago, Emily approached me and stated she needed a break from our marriage. Not a divorce, but a break to discover herself and decide what she wants. She claimed she felt suffocated and wanted time to recollect who she was before becoming a wife and mother. She planned to move back in with her parents for a few weeks, maybe a month, and take Liam with her so she could have some space while still being a mother. Her parents live around 40 minutes away in a little town, so she wasn't wanting to relocate across the state or something. I wasn't delighted with the concept because breaks in marriage usually indicate that someone has already checked out or that someone else is involved. But Emily argued that it was only about her need for distance, not about me or our marriage. She stated that she still loved me, but felt confused, and needed time apart from our routine to clear her mind. I told her it was a horrible idea, and that we should work on it together, but she insisted that this break was necessary to save our marriage in the long run. So I agreed to the break, primarily because I did not want to be the domineering husband who refused to give his wife space when she was plainly struggling with something. Emily packed up her and Liam's belongings and returned to her parents' home. We agreed that she would bring Liam back to spend weekends with me and that we would check in every few days. The strategy was intended to be just temporary, lasting 4 to 6 weeks at most. The first week was strange because the house seemed empty, and I missed having Liam around for his usual nighttime ritual and weekend activities. Emily would text me updates on Liam's progress and send pictures, which was lovely, but our phone talks were awkward and surface level. She'd ask about work, and I'd ask about her parents and Liam. But we weren't really talking about ourselves, the break, or what she was discovering about herself. By the second week, I noticed Emily was posting more on social media, which surprised me because she was never a huge Facebook or Instagram user. She would upload photos of herself at coffee shops, hiking trails, and local events, with notes about exploring and discovering new things. Some of the photos were obviously taken by someone else because she was in them, but she never mentioned hanging out with pals or who took the photos. When I inquired about it during one of our calls, she explained that she was simply trying to get out more and meet new people. Maybe she should make new friends, as she had been feeling solitary at home with Liam. Around the third week, Liam began wondering when he would return home and whether mommy and daddy were divorcing, like his friend's parents had. I told him mommy needed some time to visit grandma and grandpa, and that we'd all be back together shortly, but I began to question if that was real. Emily continued extending her break. She first said she needed another week, then 2 weeks, and even until the end of the month. Every time I pressed for a particular timeline or inquired what she was working on, she'd become defensive, claiming that I was pressing her and not respecting her need for space. That's when I decided to dig. Emily's answers were too ambiguous, and her behavior was too dissimilar to the lady I'd been married to for 8 years. Because of my employment, I'm fairly adept at using computers. So I investigated our phone records and discovered she was texting and calling one number far more frequently than usual, sometimes for hours at a time and often late at night. The number had a different area code and was not from around here or where her parents live. I reverse searched the number and discovered that it belonged to Jason, a Portland, Oregon resident. I located his Facebook profile and discovered he was 26, unemployed, and according to his posts, living with his mother while pursuing his music career and growing his streaming audience. His profile was filled with complaints about how difficult life was and how no one understood his artistic vision, as well as a slew of furious statements about women and relationships that made me think he wasn't a good match. But here's the kicker. Emily had been and commenting on his posts for almost 7 months, long before she requested for the break. Their friendship began innocently enough, with her commenting on his music posts and him responding with gratitude. But then I noticed it escalated to more intimate exchanges in the comments, before they clearly moved on to private messaging and phone calls. I felt horrible when I realized my wife's desire to discover herself was really about finding some loser in Oregon who spent his days playing video games and whining about life while his mother paid his bills. But I didn't approach Emily straight away because I needed to consider my future steps, particularly involving Liam, and what this meant for our marriage and custody arrangements. I began taking screenshots of everything I could find, their public interactions on social media, Emily's posts about making new connections and opening her heart to new experiences, and Jason's posts about finally finding someone who understands him. That coincided with Emily's request for a break. I also printed out our phone records, which included hundreds of texts and hours of calls between them. While I was gathering evidence, Emily contacted to say she wanted to extend the break permanently and was considering making significant changes in her life. She explained that she had been doing a lot of soul-searching and thought she would be happier in a different setting. Perhaps somewhere with greater prospects and a different way of life. When I inquired what that meant, she said she was thinking about relocating somewhere else, possibly to the West Coast, where she could start over and establish the life she wanted. That's when it dawned on Emily that she was having more than just an emotional affair with Jason. She intended to go to Oregon to live with him and take Liam with her. I asked her directly if she was planning to relocate and take our son away from me, and she claimed she hadn't made any final decisions, but she wanted to weigh all of her alternatives for creating a better future for herself and Liam. When she asked for a break, I reminded her that transferring Liam across the country was not an option we had agreed on, and she said the break helped her realize that staying in Ohio wasn't best for her or Liam in the long term. She said Liam would benefit from fresh experiences and a new setting, and that I could visit, or even relocate, if I wanted to be a part of their new life. That discussion concluded with me informing Emily that we needed to discuss these plans in person because transferring our son across the country was a significant decision that affected all of us, not just her quest of self-discovery. She agreed to meet me the next day, halfway between our house and her parents' home. The next day, I met Emily and provided copies of everything I discovered, including phone records, screenshots of her social media exchanges with Jason, and his public posts about their connection. I placed the papers on the table and informed her that I knew about Jason and that her break was not about discovering herself. It was about having an affair with a guy from Oregon who couldn't support himself. Emily's face turned extremely red, and she began to explain that Jason was simply a friend who knew what she was going through, and that their relationship was emotional rather than sexual. I told her it didn't matter because she'd been lying to me for months and was about to take our son across the country to be with her affair partner without even consulting me first. She stated that she had no set plans and was simply exploring her possibilities. But then she began to explain about how miserable she had been in our marriage, and how Jason made her feel alive and understood in ways I had never experienced. She claimed Jason supported her aspirations and encouraged her to think bigger about her life, whereas I simply wanted her to stay in the same monotonous routine indefinitely. I told her that was great. She could pursue whatever aspirations she wanted with Jason, but she was not going to take Liam to Oregon to play house with some unemployed guy she met online. Emily claimed I was being domineering and that she had as much right to decide what was best for Liam as I did. She stated that Jason was actually quite good with children and had been assisting her in determining how to provide Liam with more possibilities than he would have in Ohio. That's when I informed Emily that I'd already spoken with a divorce attorney and would be filing papers by the end of the week. I told her she could move to Oregon to be with Jason. However, Liam remained in Ohio with me, where he had stability, his school, his friends, and a father who was not pursuing internet interactions with strangers. Emily completely lost it and began ranting about how I was attempting to control her and keep her from being happy and how I was using Liam as a weapon against her. She explained that she had been unhappy for years and had finally met someone who made her feel respected and supported, and now I was attempting to destroy it because I couldn't accept her finding happiness outside of our marriage. I told her I wasn't attempting to destroy anything. She had already done so by lying, cheating, and plotting to uproot our son's life for a boy she'd never met in person. She conceded that they hadn't met face to face yet, but that didn't make their connection any less genuine or meaningful. We went back and forth, with her insisting that moving to Oregon would be good for Liam and provide him with new opportunities, and me pointing out that she wanted to move across the country for a guy who was unemployed and lived with his mother, neither of which screamed stability nor better opportunities for our son. Emily refused to let me coerce her into staying in a marriage and life that made her unhappy, and I told her she was free to leave. But Liam was not going anywhere. She gathered the papers I brought and stated that she needed time to think about everything, which I found humorous, given that she had been doing nothing but thinking for the past 4 months, while lying to me about what she was thinking about. That afternoon, I went straight to my attorney's office and filed for divorce, citing adultery and asking primary custody of Liam, because Emily planned to relocate him across the nation for reasons unrelated to his best interests. My attorney indicated the information I had obtained would be useful, particularly the record of Emily's affair and her stated plan to relocate Liam away from his established life in Ohio. I also called Emily's parents that evening to let them know what was going on. They were surprised because Emily had told them she only needed space to think things through and had made no mention of Jason or moving to Oregon. Her father was furious that Emily had also been lying to them and using their home as a base while she planned to relocate across the nation. Her mother was more concerned about Liam and how all this would affect him. Emily called the next day, yelling at me for catching her off guard by filing for divorce and speaking with her parents. She stated that she believed we would work things out and that filing papers was a nuclear option that would end any hope of saving our marriage. I told her the ship had gone when she began her affair and made plans to relocate our son across the nation without consulting me. She explained that she had not made any final decisions about moving and was simply investigating options. But I pointed out that she had previously discussed Liam with Jason and how he would fit into their lives in Oregon. She couldn't deny it since I had screenshots of Jason saying he was excited to meet the little man and that he was ready to step up and be the father figure Liam needed. Things will move quickly in the next weeks. Emily hired her own attorney and attempted to argue that she should have primary custody because she had been Liam's primary caregiver for the previous 2 years as a stay-at-home parent. But Emily's attorney couldn't get around the fact that she was preparing to take Liam away from his school, friends, and extended family to live with a man she met online who didn't have a job or stable living arrangement. The court imposed a temporary custody agreement in which Liam would spend the week with me and visit Emily on weekends, but only in Ohio. Emily was not permitted to take Liam out of state without court authorization, thereby canceling her plans to relocate to Oregon, at least in the short term. Emily was upset about the custody limits, claiming that I was using the court system to control her and prevent her from starting a new life. She stated that Jason was supportive and accepting of the situation and was even considering moving to Ohio to be closer to her, which I found amusing given that he couldn't even afford his own apartment in Oregon, where the cost of living was far cheaper than in most other parts of Ohio. Throughout the process, I had to explain to Liam why Mommy and Daddy were no longer living together and why he couldn't visit Grandma and Grandpa as frequently. I kept it short and age-appropriate, informing him that grown-ups often disagree on important issues and need to live separately while they work things out. Liam handled it well, possibly better than Emily and I did, and was pleased to be back in his own room and normal routine. About 6 weeks after I filed for divorce, Emily arrived to pick up Liam for her weekend visit and told me she'd been thinking a lot about our marriage and whether we could work things out. She explained that her friendship with Jason had made her see what was missing in our marriage, but that if we both put in the effort, we might be able to reestablish our bond. I told her I was not interested in rebuilding anything with someone who had lied to me for months and attempted to relocate our son across the nation for an affair partner. She claimed that her connection with Jason was not an affair because they had never been physically intimate, and that she ended it because it was interfering with her ability to effectively co-parent with me. I asked her if she ended it because she understood it was wrong, or because custody limitations prevented her from moving to Oregon, and she couldn't give me a straight answer. She kept avoiding the subject, claiming that her priorities had shifted now that she saw how serious the legal situation was. That's when I understood Emily hadn't really ended her relationship with Jason because she recognized she'd made a mistake. She only put their relationship on hold since I had made it legally impossible for her to carry out her initial intention. She was likely trying to reconcile with me as a backup plan while still talking to Jason and working out a new way to make their relationship work. I told Emily I didn't want to be her backup plan while she found out how to make her affair work within the confines of our custody arrangement. She claimed I was being unfair and not giving her credit for attempting to save our marriage. But I pointed out that she only became interested in resolving things when the court stopped her plan to go away with Liam. The divorce process took a few more months to complete. Emily's attorney tried many techniques to obtain more custody time or permission to relocate with Liam, but none of them were successful since she could not demonstrate that moving to Oregon would benefit Liam in any real way. The fact that she wanted to relocate to live with an unemployed man she met online did not help her case. In the end, I gained primary physical custody of Liam, with Emily taking him every other weekend and alternating holidays. She also has to pay a little amount of child support because I am covering the majority of Liam's expenses, and she is expected to seek a job now that she is not staying at home full-time. The court also ruled that neither of us may move more than 100 miles from our current residence without authorization and a custody modification hearing. Emily moved into a modest apartment about 20 minutes from our house and accepted a position at another dental office. She appears to have accepted that her Oregon dreams are not going to happen, at least not anytime soon, but I believe she is still in communication with Jason in some way. Her social media activity implies that she is still interested in making new connections and being open to new options, which sounds similar to the language she used when she was planning to relocate across the nation. Liam has adjusted well to the new situation and seemed to enjoy having a constant routine again. He no longer asks about the divorce and has accepted that mommy and daddy now live in different houses, but they both love him deeply. Emily is a good mother when she focuses on being a mother rather than pursuing internet romances. So I'm delighted Liam can still spend time with her on a daily basis. The entire incident taught me that when someone asks for a break to rediscover themselves, they've usually already met someone else and are just figuring out how to transfer to that new relationship without fully upsetting their present one. I'm not bitter about Emily's decision to dissolve our marriage since, if she was that miserable, it's best for everyone that we weren't together. But I'm outraged that she sought to use Liam as a bargaining chip in her affair, willing to uproot his entire existence to pursue a fantasy with a guy who couldn't even maintain himself, let alone support a child. Now I'm focused on being the greatest single dad I can be for Liam and ensuring that his life is stable and consistent. Emily is free to pursue any relationships that make her happy, but she will not disturb Liam's life or exploit him to enable her love escapades. So Ada filed for divorce when Emily was going to take Liam across the country, despite the fact that she claimed to be only exploring her options and had made no final decisions. Update 1. Many people have requested for updates, so here is what has happened since my first post. Emily has been following the custody arrangement, and things have gone quite smoothly for the previous few months. Liam is doing well in school and appears to have completely adjusted to his new routine. Emily picks him up on Friday evenings and returns him on Sunday nights, and they normally do typical kid activities like going to parks, movies, or visiting her parents. But last week, something happened that verified my concerns that she is still in communication with Jason. Liam returned home from a weekend with Emily and reported that mommy's buddy Jason had been video chatting with them. When I asked Liam about it, he claimed Jason had spoken to him several times and asked him about school and what he enjoyed doing for pleasure. I immediately called Emily and inquired about Jason speaking with our son during her custody period. She tried to downplay things, saying Jason was just being friendly, and it wasn't a big issue because they were only video talking. I told her I didn't want a stranger from Oregon talking to Liam, especially the guy she was having an affair with. Emily became defensive, claiming Jason was no longer a stranger because they had been chatting for nearly a year and that he was really interested in being a part of her life, including getting to know Liam. She said Jason had been inquiring about Liam for months, and she felt it would be good for them to meet, even if just via video chat. I told Emily that Jason seeing Liam was not her decision to make unilaterally, especially because our custody arrangement stated that neither of us could introduce Liam to romantic partners unless we discussed it first. She said Jason was not legally a love partner because they had never met in person, and their connection was hampered by distance and legal issues. That's when I realized Emily was still planning to work things out with Jason somehow. Even though she couldn't go to Oregon anymore, she'd undoubtedly been telling Jason about the custody limits, and they were trying to figure out other ways to strengthen their relationship, such as getting Jason involved with Liam to see how they'd all get along. I informed Emily that any future contact between Jason and Liam must cease immediately, and that if I discovered she was still facilitating communications between them, I would return to court to amend the custody arrangement. She claimed I was domineering and tried to regulate who she could talk to and who Liam could meet, but I explained that sheltering Liam from my ex-wife's affair partner was not controlling. Rather, it was being a responsible parent. Emily agreed to discontinue the video calls, but she thought I was overreacting and that Jason was a wonderful influence who could potentially benefit Liam if their relationship progressed. I told her it wasn't going to happen, and that she needed to understand that her affair with Jason would not lead to a blended family situation involving our son. Emily closed the chat by expressing she understood my concerns but believed I was being unfair to Jason, who had been nothing but supportive and kind throughout the ordeal. I informed her that Jason's acceptance of her affair and her intention to relocate Liam across the country did not make him a decent guy. It made him someone prepared to assist tear up a family for his own gain. I've started keeping a closer eye on Liam's weekends with Emily and asking him more questions about their activities and who they talk to. So far, it appears that the video calls with Jason have ended. But I'm keeping a close eye on things since I don't trust Emily to keep those boundaries in place over time. Update 2. Emily began asking about changing our custody agreement around a month ago in order to spend more time with Liam throughout the summer months. She stated that she intended to take him on a longer trip and possibly visit some areas they had never been before. When I inquired for information, she was unsure where they were going and how long they would be gone. Then, 2 weeks ago, Liam returned home after a weekend visit and remarked that Mommy had been talking about taking a large vacation to the mountains and possibly visiting someone who had been wanting to meet him for a long time. When I prodded Liam for additional information, he said Emily had shown him pictures of mountains and a large house, and the person they might go see was Mommy's good friend who lives far away. I knew Emily was going to take Liam to Oregon to meet Jason, despite our custody arrangement, which said she couldn't transport him out of state without court permission. I questioned Emily that night, and she revealed she had been thinking about taking Liam to Oregon for a week over his summer break to see a different area of the nation and meet Jason in person. I informed Emily it wasn't going to happen and reminded her of the custody restrictions, but she argued they were only temporary while we were getting divorced and that now that everything was finalized, she should be able to travel with Liam during her custody period. I clarified that the travel limits were part of our permanent custody arrangement, not the temporary divorce process. Emily became irritated and stated that she believed I was keeping Liam confined in Ohio and prevented him from having new experiences. She stated Jason had been looking forward to seeing Liam for months and had planned activities they might do together, such as hiking and going to a music studio where Jason allegedly records. I informed Emily that I didn't care what Jason had planned since he wouldn't meet Liam, period. She argued I was being unreasonable, that Liam deserved to meet the people who were important in her life, especially someone who could become a permanent part of their future. Emily confessed that she and Jason had discussed Jason going to Ohio rather than her moving to Oregon. She stated that Jason was willing to relocate to be closer to her and Liam and that they had discussed him finding job in our area so they could start a life together here. I questioned Emily if she really thought Jason would move from Oregon to Ohio, given that he couldn't find work in his own area and was living with his mother. She stated that Jason was inspired to make changes in his life now that he had something tangible to strive for, and that having Emily and Liam in his life would provide him with the stability and purpose he required to achieve greater success. This entire exchange made me understand Emily had not given up on her connection with Jason at all. They just shifted their approach from her moving to Oregon to his moving to Ohio. She was presumably still planned to introduce them during the summer vacation, but this time it would be framed as Jason looking into Ohio as a potential relocation destination, rather than Emily and Liam visiting him in Oregon. I assured Emily that Jason was not moving to Ohio, and Liam would not be meeting him here, in Oregon, or anyplace else. She said that I couldn't control who she dated or introduced Liam to indefinitely, and that Jason would eventually be a part of their life whether I liked it or not. I concluded the interview by telling Emily that if she brought Liam out of state without court approval, I would arrest her for custodial interference and seek to terminate her custody rights. She claimed I was threatening her and being nasty, but I informed her I was protecting our son from her repeated terrible judgment in this matter. I called my attorney the next day and informed him of Emily's plans to move Liam to Oregon, as well as her continuous relationship with Jason. He stated we may seek for a custody amendment to make the travel limitations even more specific, perhaps shortening Emily's custody period if she continued to breach the current order. We filed a motion asking the court to specify that Emily could not take Liam out of state under any circumstances without formal court consent, and we asked that she be held in contempt if she continued to plan unlawful travel with him. We also requested that Emily provide full schedules for all overnight trips with Liam, including those within Ohio. Emily's attorney responded, arguing that the previous custody arrangement was excessively restrictive and that Emily should be permitted to travel with Liam during her custody period, as long as she provided reasonable notice. They stated that barring Emily from bringing Liam on trips was bad for their relationship and Liam's growth. Emily had to testify last week about her relationship with Jason and plans to take Liam to Oregon. Under oath, she admitted that she had been in regular touch with Jason throughout our divorce proceedings and that they had been arranging for him to see Liam for months. She also confessed that Jason's relocation to Ohio was something they considered seriously. The judge was unimpressed with Emily's honesty and judgment. He pointed out that she had been deceitful about ending her connection with Jason and had intended to break the custody order by transporting Liam out of state without permission. He further stated that introducing Liam to her affair partner was not in Liam's best interests and demonstrates poor parenting judgment. The judge amended our custody order to make it plain that Emily cannot take Liam out of Ohio without prior written court clearance, and that any violations would result in an immediate suspension of her custody rights. He further ordered that Emily not introduce Liam to any romantic relationships without first informing me and the court, and that such introductions be gradual and in Liam's best interests. Emily was upset about the new limits, claiming that the judge was treating her like a criminal rather than a mother attempting to start a new life. Outside the courthouse, she told me that this wasn't the end, and that she'd find a way to keep Jason and Liam together while adhering to the court's ruling. I informed Emily she needed to accept that Jason would not be a part of Liam's life, and that continuing to pursue this would only end in her losing additional parenting time. She stated Jason wasn't going anywhere, and that I'd have to get used to the thought of him being a permanent part of her life. Emily has been obeying the modified custody order since the hearing, but I can see she is unhappy with it. Liam hasn't mentioned any more video chats with Jason, but I believe Emily is simply being more careful about concealing their relationship, rather than stopping it. I'm willing to battle this in court if necessary, but I refuse to allow Emily use Liam to facilitate her connection with some guy she met online. Liam needs stability and consistency, not being drawn into his mother's romantic drama with a stranger from across the country. So, that's where things are now. Emily continues to see Liam every other weekend, but with more stricter limitations for travel and introducing him to new people. I believe she is still planning to work things out with Jason, but I now have more legal protection to prevent her from involving Liam in that connection. Sister shamed me online after I refused her family of 4 my house for 10 months because she blew $100,000 in 60 days. Now dad says I ruined family. I've been living here for the past 10 years, paying it off bit by bit, and now I can say it's mine. It's nothing extravagant, just a simple 3-bedroom home, but it's mine. You know that feeling you get when you've worked your tail off for something and can finally sit back and say, yeah, I did that? That's where I'm at. I don't have expensive furniture or a large backyard, but it's a good spot, comfortable, peaceful, and most importantly, my own. It's where I can relax without feeling stressed. Then there's my sister Laura. She's 29 and married to Derek, who is 31. They're what you call free-spirited people. The ones who constantly complain about how everyone else is wasting their lives in the grind, working dull 9-to-5 jobs while they live their best lives or whatever. They've always been like that, ever since they met. Always plotting a grand dramatic escape from the rat race. Honestly, I didn't think they'd ever do it. Everyone dreams of quitting their jobs and exploring the world, right? It's like a phase that passes once you realize you have bills. But not Laura or Derek. Oh no. They're the type of folks who followed through on it. They sold their own home, where their 2 children, Sophie and Miles, had spent their whole lives, and planned to explore the world for a year. Yes, you heard that correctly. They sold everything for a dream vacation, believing the market was soaring and they'd made a fortune from the deal. They planned to live off the money, work odd jobs here and there, and travel for about a year. So I'm watching this all develop from my small house, thinking, all right, that's great for them, but this is a poor idea. They have 2 children to take care of. Sophie is 7 years old and Miles is 5, and traveling with children is not the same as backpacking through Europe on a whim. There is planning involved, but they essentially waved it off, claiming they'd work it out along the road, and I'm like, all right, whatever. It's your life. Fast forward a few months, and I'm relaxing at home, most likely watching TV, when Laura calls. Since they departed, I haven't heard much from her, just the occasional Instagram post about how beautiful life is, and some photographs of them eating weird food in random places. So I expect this call to be one of those when she brags about how amazing everything is. But the moment I pick up, I can sense something is wrong. Laura appears stressed, very stressed, and begins complaining about how things did not go as planned. Apparently, they spent their money far faster than they anticipated. They were basically broke after 2 months. It turns out that traversing the world is pricey. Who knew, right? They stayed in good places, ate out at restaurants, and lived as if they had unlimited money. However, while you are not working and continue to spend, that money does not last long, especially if you have 2 children. Hostels and cheap Airbnbs are all fun and games until you have 2 weary, hungry children who require a consistent place to sleep each night. They are now stuck. They can't keep traveling since they don't have any money. However, they do not want to settle down and buy another house just yet. So guess what? They ask if they can move in with me. Yup. Laura, Derek, and their 2 kids lived in my 3-bedroom house for 10 months. And here's the kicker. They want to live rent-free. They didn't even offer to help. They simply asked, "Hey, can we live with you for almost a year while we figure things out?" I have to admit that I didn't know how to answer at first. I mean, it's my sister, and while I care about her, this is my home, my place. I didn't work my tail off for 10 years just to allow 4 more people to come in and take over the place. Plus, I have a routine, you know. I enjoy my privacy and quiet. I can't fathom what my house would look like with 2 tiny kids running about, let alone the mess. So I say to her, "Look, Laura, I love you guys, but this just isn't going to work. The house is too small, and I don't want that kind of disruption." I even offered to assist them find an affordable accommodation nearby, or to chip in some cash for a few months to help them get back on their feet. But it wasn't enough. Laura becomes enraged almost instantly. She starts labeling me selfish, stating I don't care about family, and I'm envious of their adventurous lifestyle. Jealous? Really? I'm starting to become angry too. It is not due to jealousy or a lack of concern for family. It's all about boundaries. I don't owe them a place to live just because they made poor decisions and did not consider things through. I understand that things don't always go as planned, but they sold their home without a backup plan. And now they want to impose the penalties on me. And this is where things become even better. Laura involves our parents after she loses her cool with me. My parents currently reside in a small apartment and are unable to accommodate Laura's family. Instead of comprehending my point of view, they begin to pressure me to allow them to move in. My mother begins talking about how family helps family and how I should be more accepting of Laura and Derek's circumstances. She says I don't understand the importance of experiences and that I should be supportive. Supportive. I offered them support. I offered to help them locate a rental or cover some of their expenditures for a few months, but it wasn't enough. They want the entire package, free rent, my home, and my space, for nearly a year. The saddest aspect is that they don't even intend to settle down. They're still considering taking occasional travels if they can find reasonable deals. So, basically, they want to live in my house for free while remaining free-spirited travelers whenever they like. How does that make sense? So now I'm sitting here, trying to figure out how to handle the aftermath. Laura is not talking to me. My parents are angry at me. Even some of our mutual acquaintances think I'm being too harsh, but I don't believe I'm in the wrong here. It's not like I'm kicking them while they're down. I offered to help in various ways. I really don't want them to live rent-free in my house for 10 months. Okay, so after that initial awkward phone chat with my sister Laura, I knew things were going to become odd, but I wasn't prepared for how messy it would get. I was thinking that I could just put my foot down, tell her no, and that would be the end of it. You know, simply draw the line and go on. But Laura and Derek decided to come to my residence in person, about a week later. They didn't even warn me, which made me feel uneasy. So I'm doing my typical Saturday morning routine, enjoying the peace and quiet, when the doorbell rings. I open it, and Laura is standing there with Derek and the kids. They have this enormous, expectant look on their faces, as if I am about to save the day or something. Meanwhile, I'm thinking, oh man, here we go. I knew what they were going to ask, but I didn't expect them to roll up like it was a done thing. Laura starts with small conversation, asking how I'm doing, how my work is doing, and so on. But I can feel the tension in the air. I know they aren't simply here to chat. It's like that moment when someone is plainly setting you up for something major, and I'm just standing there, trying to be polite, but also bracing myself for what's to come. Finally, after what seems like an eternity, Derek clears his throat and jumps in. He's like, "So, Mark, we've been thinking about what you said on the phone." And then Laura takes over, because, of course, she's the one in charge in this relationship. She's like, "We know you said you didn't think having us live here would work out, but we really believe we can make it work. It's only 10 months. We won't cause any trouble. The kids are okay. They'll stay out of your way and we'll keep things tidy. I just stand there for a second, unsure how to answer, because let's be honest, two tiny kids aren't going to keep out of my way in a house this big. And the notion that they will magically not affect my life? Yes, it is not occurring. I try to remain calm, however. I do not want to blow up straight away. So, I inquired, what's the plan though? I mean, what happens after 10 months? Are you going to get another house? What about work? Laura and Derek exchange glances, as if they haven't fully considered the situation. Laura returns and says, we're still figuring that part out. We might go back to traveling if things work out. We've been checking for cheap flight deals, and there's a chance we could get back on the road by the end of the year. We just need a place to regroup. You know, somewhere to stay while we figure out our next move. I couldn't believe what I heard. So not only do they want to stay at my house for 10 months, but they're also talking about doing further excursions. Like seriously? You're broke, you have 2 children, and your main plan is to continue living this fantasy life of floating about from place to place? I did not know what to say. I mean, where's the logic there? So I try to be as polite as possible. And I tell them, look, I understand you're in a tough spot, but I'm really not comfortable with this. It's not that I don't want to help you, it's just that my house isn't set up for that. I have my own routine, and honestly, I don't think having you all here for 10 months would work for anyone. The house is too small and you know there isn't enough space. That's when Laura's expression shifts. She turns from eager to enraged in about 2 seconds. Are you serious? She asks, folding her arms. We're family, Mark. Family helps each other out. You've got all this space, and it's just you living here. What's the big deal? Now I'm beginning to get frustrated. I understand. They're stressed. But it's beginning to seem like they believe they are entitled to my space simply because we share the same blood. I do my best to remain composed and explain, it's not just about space, Laura. It's about my life too. I've worked really hard to get this house, and I need my own peace and quiet. I'm happy to help you in other ways, but having you all live here for almost a year, I just don't see that working. Derek finally steps in, likely sensing that things are getting hot. He's attempting to be a mediator. He says, maybe we can work something out. What if we helped around the house? We could do chores, cook meals, whatever you need, and we'll be out during the day. You won't even notice we're here. But here's the thing. I definitely notice 4 more people living in my house. I'll definitely notice. Furthermore, the thought of them going out during the day makes no sense. They've got 2 tiny children. Where will they even go? They're broke. It's not like they can afford to simply take the kids on everyday outings. I shake my head and say, I appreciate the offer, but no, I just can't do it. Sorry. That's when Laura loses it. She begins yelling about how I've always been stingy and don't know what it means to truly live. She claims I've never taken any chances, that I'm simply a dull guy living a boring life, and that I'm probably envious of their exciting existence. Yes, she went there. I'm furious off right now, but I'm trying not to show it. I'll just reply, Laura, this isn't about me being jealous or anything like that. It's about boundaries. You guys made your choice to sell your house and live this lifestyle. That's fine. But now you're asking me to take responsibility for it, and that's not fair. She isn't having it. We wouldn't be asking if we had any other option. You think we want to be here begging for help? Number. But this is what family does, Mark. They help each other out when things get tough. I thought you of all people would get that. At this time, Derek appears to be uneasy. He isn't talking about anything anymore, just staring at the floor as Laura continues to yell about how selfish and callous I am. She is discussing how their trips have motivated them and how they do not want to settle for a regular suburban life. All I can think is, yeah, but you need money for all of that, don't you? At last, I reply, look, I'm sorry, but my answer is still no. I can't have you guys living here. It's just not going to work. They storm away after that, Laura muttering something about how they'll sort it out without my assistance. And honestly, I'm relieved. I didn't want to continue arguing, but I can tell this isn't the end of it. And it wasn't, since when they went, things escalated much beyond my expectations. So after Laura and Derek stormed out of my apartment, I assumed that was the end of it. Perhaps they'd calm down, come to their senses, and realize they'd made a mistake. But I was mistaken. A few days later, the true fallout began. I'm sitting at home, enjoying my usual routine, when my mother calls. Now, when my mother calls, it's merely to check in or see if I've been eating enough vegetables. Seriously. But I knew straight once that this wasn't going to be one of them. She begins, Mark, I need to talk to you about Laura. That's when I know I'm in for a trip. Laura apparently went directly to our parents after leaving my residence. She told them how I refused to aid them when they were in need. And of course she structured it so that I appeared to be a terrible person. My mother's voice seems disappointed, as if I'd kicked a puppy or something. She continues, I don't understand why you wouldn't help your sister, Mark. They're in a tough spot, and family's supposed to help each other. I attempt to remain cool, but within, I am already annoyed. I explain to her what occurred, how I offered to help them find an apartment and even give them money to get back on their feet. But all they wanted was to move in with me for 10 months rent-free. I tell her how foolish their entire plan was, how they squandered all of their money without thinking things through, and now they expect me to bail them out. But my mother, of course, does not see it that way. They made a mistake, Mark. But they're still family. You have the space. It wouldn't be forever, just long enough for them to figure things out. Here's the problem, though. My mother has a way of guilting you without even meaning to. She's not cruel or anything, but she's constantly making subtle comments that make you feel like you're failing to be a good son or brother. It is exhausting. But this time, I wouldn't have it. I made it clear to her, Mom, I'm not doing it. I love Laura, but she and Derek need to take responsibility for their choices. It's not my job to let them crash at my place because they didn't plan. She dislikes the response, but she accepts it for the time being. I assume we've finished the conversation, but no, it's only just begun because my father calls the following day. Now, my father's story is different. He's not the guilt trip type. He's more of a tough love type, so you know when he's upset. He gets right to the point. No sugarcoating. Mark, he tells me, I hear you've been giving your sister a hard time. I start to explain myself again, but he cuts me off, telling me how selfish I am, and how I have always had it easy. Yes, right. Working my butt off for 10 years to pay off this house is simple. He begins raving about how Laura has always been the one taking risks and enjoying her life to the fullest, and I am just sitting here comfortably, doing nothing interesting. He's basically accusing me of being a coward for not allowing them to remain, as if I'm some kind of stick in the mud who doesn't understand what it means to truly live. At this point, I'm becoming agitated. I inform him, Dad, this isn't about being adventurous or not. It's about them making a bad decision and expecting me to clean it up. I worked hard for this house, and I'm not going to. Let them come in and take advantage of that. But he doesn't hear it. He constantly tells me that I am the one in a position to help and that I am failing as a brother by not stepping up. It's as if he's taking what Laura said and running with it, portraying me as the evil guy in this circumstance. And that hurts. I've always been the responsible one in the family, working hard, keeping my head down, and doing what was necessary. But now it seems like none of that matters. I'm seething after that phone call. I feel as if I'm being attacked from all sides. My parents are both upset with me, and Laura is undoubtedly out there telling everyone I'm a cruel jerk. And guess what? That's precisely what's occurring. Several hours later, I received a message from one of our mutual acquaintances. Let us call him Eli. Eli is a nice guy, but he's also acquainted with Laura, so he knows her version of the tale. I get a message. Hey man, what's going on with you and Laura? She says you're not letting her family stay with you, even though they're in trouble. I explain my side to him, how it's not that straightforward, how they're asking for far too much, and how I've already suggested alternative ways to assist. Eli, being the rational person he is, listens. Then he says, yeah, but it's just for a little while, right? You could tough it out for 10 months. It's family, dude. And now I'm done. It's as if everyone forgot I have the right to say no. My house no longer feels like my own. It's simply a resource that everyone believes they are entitled to. I'm frustrated because no matter how I explain it, everyone assumes I'm being unreasonable. They all behave as if it's no big issue for me to allow a whole family to move in and completely disrupt my life for over a year. The ultimate blow comes when Laura texts me. The message is brief, but powerful. She's only saying, I can't believe you've turned your back on us. We really needed you. Now I'm sitting there, staring at my phone and feeling conflicted. Part of me feels bad, as if I should have just given in and avoided all of this turmoil. But another part of me still stands firm. I know I am not in the wrong here. It's not my fault they made poor decisions, and it's not fair to blame their troubles on me simply because I own a home. Still, the guilt is eating away at me, and I'm beginning to wonder if I might have done things differently. Perhaps I should have responded more softly. Perhaps I should have been more understanding. But at the same time, I know that giving in would have only encouraged them to continue making irresponsible mistakes, believing they could always rely on someone else to repair things. So, now I'm stuck. My parents are upset with me, Laura is enraged, and several of our friends are questioning whether I did the right thing. And I'm just trying to hang on to the idea that I set a limit for myself, even if it feels like the entire world is telling me I'm bad for doing so. But this is far from over. For as much as I want to get away from all of the drama, Laura isn't finished yet. Alright. So after all of the phone calls and texts, I'm assuming that if I ignore it for a while, things will eventually calm down. Maybe Laura and my parents will calm down and understand I'm not the evil guy in this situation, and we can all go on. But things did not calm down. They really escalated. It starts with my mother. She's still trying to be the mediator, contacting me every few days and saying, "Mark, you've got to help your sister. You don't know what it's like to be in her shoes. She's struggling, she's got kids." It's the same thing again and again, and I have to convince her that it's not because I don't want to assist. It all comes down to how much they ask. It's not like they're at risk of becoming homeless on the streets. I provided assistance in numerous ways, but nothing I said appears to reach through. Then one evening, I received a knock on my door. It's Laura and Derek. There will be no texting or calling beforehand, just showed up as if everything was normal. I opened the door, and there they are, standing there with exhausted, desperate expressions. The children are gripping Laura's legs. I can tell right now that this is going to be awkward. Laura is holding some documents in her hand, and I'm already getting a horrible feeling in my stomach, like if I'm about to get dragged into something bigger than I anticipated. Laura does not waste any time. "Mark, we need you to reconsider. This is serious. We've looked everywhere, and there's nowhere affordable for us to stay. The rentals are too expensive, and we don't have the money to even put down a deposit." She waved the papers in front of me. They are printouts of apartment listings, the majority of which have been struck off in red. I take a quick glimpse at them, but I'm already planning my response. I am not in the mood to debate, but it is evident that they will not take no for an answer. Before I can say anything, Derek speaks up. And this time he isn't the calm, quiet guy I remember. He's frustrated and almost angry. "We've tried everything, Mark. We're out of options. You've got this house all to yourself, and you're just sitting on it while we're struggling. You really can't let us stay for a little while now?" I'm becoming irritated. I've had this conversation a dozen times, and each time I say no, they keep pushing. This is what I say. "I've told you guys before, I'm not comfortable with having 4 extra people in my house for nearly a year. I offered to help you find something else. I even offered money, but you're not listening. I can't let you move in. That's final." But Laura isn't backing down this time. She moves closer, and her voice shakes as if she is on the point of tears. "Mark, we have nowhere else to go. The kids are exhausted. We're exhausted. We're not asking for much. Just a roof over our heads for a little while. We'll pay you back when we get back on our feet. Please, you're our last hope." I look at Sophie and Miles, who are just standing there, puzzled. They're probably not sure what's going on. And honestly, it makes me feel terrible. It's not their fault that their parents made lousy decisions. But I can't allow guilt to push me into making a decision I'll regret. I have to be firm, or else this circumstance will turn my life upside down. So I take a deep breath and say, "I'm sorry, but I can't. I know it's hard, but this isn't the answer." "You need to find another solution," Laura snaps. She goes from sorrowful to angry in a split second. "You're unbelievable," she cries, her voice booming through the corridor. "You're just sitting here living comfortably while your own family is suffering. I can't believe how heartless you've become. You've changed, Mark. You're not the brother I grew up with." Her words hit me like a punch in the belly, but I'm too enraged to take them in. I fire back. "I haven't changed. You're the one who's acting entitled, thinking you can just show up and expect me to bail you out because you didn't plan ahead. I didn't make this mess. You did. And now you want me to fix it for you. That's not how this works." The argument escalates from there. Derek interjects, adding, "I've always been the selfish one in the family. That I have never been available when they needed me." He's bringing up things from years ago. Random things that no longer matter. For example, I did not lend him money for a side company idea he had years ago. It's as if they've been saving all of their animosity for the right moment to unleash it on me. We're all shouting at each other, and the kids are weeping. It is a disaster. I'm standing in my own doorway, accused of being the world's worst brother, and all I can think is, how did it get to this? Finally, all I can do is say, enough. This is my house, and I've made my decision. I'm not changing my mind now. I think you need to leave. Laura glances at me, as if she cannot believe what she is hearing. She opens her lips to say something but instead shakes her head, snatches the kids and walks out. Derek comes behind her, staring at me as if I were the devil or something. As they walk away, I feel a strange combination of rage, remorse, and relief. I know I did the right thing by standing my ground, but it's still unfortunate that it had to come to this. I watched them get into their car and drive away, and for a moment, I just stood there, wondering what would happen next. I can't help but assume that this isn't the conclusion of the story, and that there will be more drama ahead. And, guess what? I was correct. Because later that night, my phone fills up with texts from family members. Laura entered into drama mode and told everyone what had happened. She makes it sound like I kicked them out into the streets and they have nowhere to go. And I am sitting here laughing about it. My aunt, cousins, everyone is contacting me, saying things like, "How could you do this to Laura and the kids? You've got a big house, and they just need a place to stay." It's as if they've all bought into the idea that I'm a villain, hoarding my house while my sister suffers. And no matter how many times I try to explain my position, no one listens. They're all saying the same thing. Family helps family. By the end of the night, I am exhausted. I've spent hours defending myself, but it seems no one cares. Laura has managed to turn everyone against me, and now I'm the bad guy in this whole situation. But here's the thing. I'm still not moving. I am not going to allow them to shame me into doing anything that will make my life miserable. I know I did the right thing, even if no one else thinks so. All I have to do now is find out how to survive the aftermath. So with the whole family drama and the messages coming at me from all sides, I was ready to disengage for a time. I'd like to switch off my phone, lock the doors, and wait for the storm to pass. But of course, things were not going to settle down. If anything, they were about to reach a new degree of ridiculousness. After a few days, I still haven't heard directly from Laura or Derek, which should have been a relief. But to be honest, it gave me the impression that something enormous was developing. It seemed like the silence before a big quarrel. I could see they weren't finished with me yet. Sure enough, one morning I woke up to read Laura's enormous Facebook post. Of course it's public, so everybody and their dog can view it. She's ranting about how several family members, including me, have abandoned her in her time of need. How she and her children are just one step away from becoming homeless. All they sought was some encouragement from someone in a position of privilege. The message is lots of dramatic language, discussing how certain family members are selfish and don't grasp the value of helping one another when things go rough. And what about the comments section? It's a complete disaster. People are chiming in, expressing how inhumane it is to turn away family. They can't believe someone would do such to their sister. I'm reading this and my blood is boiling because these folks don't even know half of the situation. They just consume anything Laura feeds them. And now, I'm public enemy number one. Worse, a large number of our extended family members are also commenting. My aunt, whom I haven't spoken to in years, says, "I always knew Mark was selfish," as if this is a known truth about me. My cousins are sharing the message, and now I'm getting notifications about how I need to step up and do the right thing. At this point, I'm irate. I try to remain calm and sensible, but the more I go through the comments, the angrier I am. It's as if, no matter how often I explain my side of the story, Laura has managed to turn me into the villain. And frankly, it's working. I am losing the public war here. So I made a decision. I don't typically air my dirty laundry online, but this has gone too far. If Laura is going to drag me through the mud on Facebook, I will set the record straight. In response, I write a lengthy essay describing my side of the story, how I volunteered to help Laura and Derek in various ways, how they were the ones who requested to live rent-free for nearly a year, and how I just cannot accommodate them since their request is absurd. I add that they've been careless with their money, that they've been attempting to guilt-trip me into giving up my house, and that this entire problem is their fault, not mine. I hit the post and waited. And boy, did the fireworks begin immediately. People are leaving comments on my post. Some people agree with me, stating it is not my job to take in Laura and her family. Others, of course, continue to support Laura, saying I'm being too harsh and that family should stick together no matter what. It's developing into a full-fledged argument in the comments area, with individuals advocating one side or the other. Laura, of course, sees my post and freaks out. She starts emailing me directly, calling me every name in the book: selfish, uncaring, and arrogant. She accuses me of wrecking the family and cannot believe I would embarrass her in front of everyone. The irony of her saying this after publicly dragging me is simply too much. I strive to remain cool and respond calmly. I told her I had no choice but to defend myself after she lambasted me on Facebook. But she isn't hearing it. She is too caught up in her own story, sure that she is the victim here. She eventually blocks me on Facebook, as if we were teens, which is good with me. Less drama for me to deal with. But just when I think things are starting to calm down, my father calls. Here we go again, right? He isn't yelling this time, but his voice is low and serious, which is somewhat worse. He is disappointed. He says he saw the entire thing on Facebook and is furious that I made it public. He's upset because I didn't handle it quietly, and now the entire family is divided. I can tell he's blaming me for making things worse. But I try to explain that I'm backed into a corner. Laura began the entire affair by attacking me first. But no matter what I say, he's not satisfied. He begins talking about how I need to make things right, how family is the most important thing, and how it is not too late to offer Laura and Derek a home to live. He continues, if I do that, maybe things can go back to normal. And this is where I finally snap. I advise him, Dad, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to let them live with me, and I'm done apologizing for it. I've done nothing wrong. They made their choices, and now they have to deal with the consequences. I'm not their safety net, and it's not my job to fix their problems. He is silent for a moment, and I can see he is shocked. I don't typically stand up to him in this way, but I'm done. I'm not going to allow them to shame me into doing anything I don't want to do in order to maintain peace. Finally, he sighs and adds, I hope you know what you're doing, Mark. He then hangs up. After that, everything goes quiet. Laura still has me blocked on social media, and my parents aren't really speaking to me. It feels like the entire family is in a strange, tense standoff, waiting for someone to make the next step. But here's the thing. I won't make the next step. I have done my part. I have stood my stance, and I will not back down. It's unfortunate that things had to turn out this way. I've never wanted to clash with my family. However, I am confident that I did the correct thing. I established a limit and kept to it, even when it seemed like the entire world was against me. And yes, the family dynamics may have changed, and things may not return to normal. But honestly, I'm fine with that. Because at least I know I'm living on my own terms, in my own home, with no one attempting to shame me into giving it up. Mommy, I got all A's, I said at 9, but she screamed for drug money, took my $20, vanished for 6 years. Now she's back, begging to be my mom again. My mother trusted me wholeheartedly when I was 11 years old, since I had already learned how to do my own laundry, cook a dinner with only 3 ingredients, and wrap a tight blanket over myself at night to make it feel like someone was holding me. And it's not like my mother was missing from the house. She spent her entire day confined in her room, concentrating on her art. And as for why her art was never enough to pay the bills, I assumed she trusted me enough to make cost-effective decisions. So even when I awoke in the middle of the night to gunfire or 100-degree temperatures in the summer because we didn't have air conditioning, I felt a strong feeling of pride. And whenever I went to my friends' places, I always prepared the entire supper, and they'd wake up to a clean house, with counters scrubbed, sofas hoovered, and even the dollar bills that had fallen between the cushions picked up. They'd always say things like, "Wow, your mom must be an incredible woman with how well she raised you." And I'd say with a great beaming smile, "Yes, she is the best." No one ever questioned why I was so thin, why I couldn't sleep in a bed and instead preferred the hardwood floor, or why I couldn't even finish a sentence without apologizing. They always assumed I was mature and nice. So, when my mother walked out of her room for the first time in days, I lunged at her. "Mommy, look at my report card. The teacher said I did really well." "That's nice, honey," she said as her smoke breath burned my nostrils. "Can you tell Mommy what day it is?" "Wednesday." I figured if I could make myself appear happy enough, she'd finally love me the way I wanted. Until she suddenly began flailing about the room and punching a hole in the wall. Fuck, I thought it was effing Thursday. I thought the payout was today. When I approached her, she raised her fist, as if she were about to lash out at me, so I made sure to talk swiftly. "Mom, I have $20. Her features immediately softened. "Honey, you are the kindest, most mature girl a mother could ever ask for." But I didn't have time to relish the moment because as soon as she grabbed it from my hand, she walked over to the store to buy art supplies, returned home, and resumed working on her painting. Now you might be asking where I obtained the $20. Well, there was this wealthy student at school who always had lunch money. He was rude to everyone, spitting on kids who looked like them. So I started keeping a mental list of who I could steal from and when. All for those fleeting moments when mom would emerge, requiring another $20, $40, or a refill of her art supplies. And, like all preteens breaking the law, I became cocky. And after only 3 months, Ms. Lee had caught me. When she called me into her office, I knew exactly what was going to happen. I feared she was going to call the cops or shout at me. But no. Instead, she asked me questions. Not an interrogation, but more of a chat. Her response, "What's your favorite food?" My suggestion, rice with ketchup. She asked, "What do you and your mom like to do for fun together?" Mom responded, "Sometimes, the day after she gets her government check and she does art in her room, I sit by the crack in her door and talk about my day." She asked, "What time do you go to sleep at?" I say, "At 2 a.m., when my mom goes quiet." I smiled the entire time, just glad to be talking to an adult who cared about me. But when I looked up, I saw it. Her eyes were full of tears. She ordered me to wait while she went to get someone, and she gave me a Nintendo Switch to keep me entertained. 2 hours later, I heard a knock at the door. Ms. Lee wasn't alone. She was accompanied by 2 police officers and a lady in a suit who claimed to be from Family Services. They all had the same expression, as if they were attempting to grin but couldn't quite do it. "Sweetie, we're going to take a ride to your house," she stated. "We need to check on your mom." I began to hyperventilate. "No, she's working on her art. She needs to be quiet." I screamed confidently, but they were already escorting me to the car. When we arrived, my mom did not answer the door. The cops stated that they needed to do a wellness check. I begged them not to disturb her concentration, but they opened the door anyway because my mother insisted on leaving it unlocked. I was the one who knocked on my mom's door. "Mom, there are people here." When she did not answer, I urged them to leave her alone, but they refused. Within seconds, the police officer had opened the door himself. What I saw caused my jaw to drop so hard that I believed my face would break. There was no article, easel, or paint supplies. Just my mother sitting in the center of the room with a metal spoon and powder. The walls were coated with black mold. You couldn't see the floor through the torrent of cigarette butts. I was prepared to beg the lady to take me away. The social worker lady placed her hand on my shoulder. I flinched sharply. She informed me her name was Victoria and that everything would be fine. The police officers entered the room while I stood frozen in the corridor. My mother started shouting at them to get out. She tossed stuff. I heard glass break. Victoria brought me back to the living room and instructed me to sit on our broken couch. I could not stop shaking. The police finally arrived after what seemed like an eternity. They had my mother in handcuffs. She was crying and calling out my name. I wanted to dash towards her, but Victoria stopped me. My mother continued saying she was sorry and loved me. Then they drove her away in the police car. I looked from the window as the lights faded down our street. Victoria sat next to me and told me that I'd have to stay somewhere else for a time. She asked whether I had any family around. I told her about my Aunt Sarah, who lived 2 towns away. We hadn't spoken to her in years since my mother believed she was harsh and judgmental. Victoria made several phone calls. I packed my clothes in a rubbish bag. I did not have much. 3 shirts, 2 sets of pants, and some undergarments. Victoria helped me gather my school supplies. She found my report card on the floor, where my mother had dropped it. All A's, with the exception of 1 B in mathematics. She told me to be proud of myself. We drove for around an hour to Aunt Sarah's place. It was much larger than our apartment, with 2 floors and a big yard. Aunt Sarah opened the door before we could knock. She looked exactly like my mother, but healthier. Her hair was clean, and she wore regular clothing. She embraced me so tightly that I couldn't breathe. Victoria discussed the situation while I sat on a real couch with actual cushions. Aunt Sarah kept wiping her eyes. She claimed she had been trying to acquire custody of me for years, but my mother would not let her near us. I didn't realize that. Victoria left after ensuring that I was settled. Aunt Sarah brought me to a real bedroom, complete with a bed, bedding, and a closet. She claimed it was mine now. I wasn't sure what to do. I just stood there and stared at the bed. She inquired if I was hungry, and I responded no, despite my stomach growling. She prepared me a sandwich anyway: turkey, cheese, and lettuce. I ate it so quickly that I almost vomited. That first night I slept on the floor out of habit. Aunt Sarah found me in the morning and cried. She helped me go back into bed and tucked me in. I was there for 3 days straight. Only got up to use the restroom. She brought me food and water, never forced me to speak. On the 4th day, I eventually made it downstairs. She was making pancakes from scratch, not frozen. She asked if I wanted to help, and I agreed. We cooked together in solitude. The pancakes were perfect, fluffy, and golden. I ate 6 of them. She didn't say anything about it, only grinned and made more. After breakfast, she asked if I wanted to go clothes shopping. I explained that I didn't have any money. She stated that this was her current work. We went to Target and she let me choose whatever I wanted. I continued scrutinizing the price tags until she advised me not to worry about it. I got new clothes, shirts that actually fit, a winter coat, and shoes that are hole-free. She even got me genuine pajamas with matching shirts and bottoms. When we came home, she helped me organize everything in my closet. Then she sat on my bed, asking if I wanted to talk about my mother. I shake my head. She said it was fine, and we could discuss whenever I was ready, or never, if that was my preference. But she did tell me one thing. My mother was ill and needed care. It was not my fault, and I could not have helped her. I'd done all a child could do, and more. Much more than I should have had to. I started crying then, and I mean really crying. The kind when you can't breathe and snot drips down your cheeks. Aunt Sarah hugged me while I grieved. She didn't try to get me to stop or assure me it was fine. She just allowed me to cry till I couldn't anymore. School began 2 weeks later. Aunt Sarah drove me there in her old Honda Civic, which smelled of vanilla air freshener and coffee. She accompanied me to the workplace and ensured that everything was in order, including new emergency contacts, addresses, and everything else. The secretary continued giving me sympathetic looks, which made my skin crawl. Aunt Sarah hugged me farewell and said, "Have a good day." Her perfume was different from my mother's, cleaner and softer. I felt afraid. What if everyone knew about my mother? What if everyone stared at me? But no one said anything. I went to my classes as usual. I ate lunch alone, as usual, picking at the cafeteria meatloaf which looked nothing like food. I completed my schoolwork in the library after school while waiting for Aunt Sarah to pick me up. Mrs. Chen, the librarian, began leaving small bowls of pretzels at my customary table. Things were fine for nearly a month. I was eating 3 meals every day, sleeping in a proper bed with matching sheets and pillows that weren't as flat as pancakes, and taking hot showers whenever I wanted without worrying about the water bill. Aunt Sarah even signed me up for soccer after I suggested that it looked enjoyable. She bought all of the gear, including cleats that actually fit, shin guards, and a water bottle with my name on it. She attended every practice, sitting on the metal bleachers alongside the other parents. I was bad at first, but my coach insisted I was improving. My teammates were kind to me. One girl, Isabella, asked me to her birthday celebration. I'd never attended a proper birthday celebration before. Then my mother called. Aunt Sarah had given me a phone for emergencies. A flip phone, nothing fancy, with a small charm hanging off it, which she claimed was for good luck. It rang as I was finishing my schoolwork. Unknown number. I responded without thinking. Her voice sounded different, somehow clearer. She stated that she was in treatment and doing well. She really missed me. She apologized for everything. Could I come only once? She needed to see me to explain what had happened and make things right. I told her I will think about it, and then hung up. My hands were so shaky that I dropped the phone. It clattered over the wooden floor, reverberating throughout my peaceful chamber. I did not inform Aunt Sarah about the call. I knew I should have, but I didn't want her to take my phone. My mother called again the following day, and the next. Aunt Sarah would always say the same things at work. She adored me. She was getting better. She only needed to see me one time. Her voice had the aspect of being frantic while also trying to sound casual. On the 5th day, she told me she was leaving soon. Perhaps we can be a family again. This time, we have a true family. She'd land a job and a decent apartment. We'd have food in the fridge and heat in the winter, everything I could want. She even discussed acquiring a cat, which reminded me that I'd always wanted one. I began planning. I saved my lunch money rather than eating. I told Aunt Sarah I wasn't hungry for supper because my tummy hurt from running so much at soccer. I wrapped half my lunch in napkins and threw it away later. I needed to be ready when my mother came out. I needed to have money for her. Old habits die hard, I suppose. Aunt Sarah observed that I was losing weight. She scheduled doctor visits. The doctor stated that I was malnourished and needed to eat more. Aunt Sarah observed me at every meal after that. ensuring that I finished everything. I became imaginative, spitting food into my milk while she glanced away, stuffing it in my pockets, and feeding it to her dog Bruce while she went to the restroom. Bruce, a golden retriever, would eat anything and wag his tail as if we were playing a game. My mom's calls became more frequent. 3 times every day. 4. Sometimes during class my phone vibrates against my leg. She described the treatment facility as awful. They were nasty to her. I didn't understand her artwork. She needed to get out. Needed my assistance. Do I still love her? Was I her nice girl? The one who always assisted mommy? I agreed to everything. I couldn't help it. Her voice did something to my mind. Made me forget about everything awful that happened. Made me think of the few times mom hugged me, the time she told me she was pleased with me for making supper, the time she let me sleep in her bed during a rainstorm, her arms around me making me feel safe for a change. She told me her release date was 2 weeks away, on October 15th, a Tuesday. She said she would come get me and we'd flee away together, begin fresh somewhere new. Maybe California, where the weather was always pleasant and I could see the ocean. I could attend school there. She will get clean for good this time. Not like previously. This time would be different. I believed her. Or maybe I simply wanted to believe her. It's hard to discern the difference when you're 12 and yearning for your mother to adore you. I began packing secretly, put a few clothes in my backpack at a time, my favorite jeans. Aunt Sarah bought me the softest sweater I had ever owned. I took food from the pantry while Aunt Sarah wasn't looking. Crackers, granola bars, anything that wouldn't spoil. I filled water bottles and concealed them underneath my bed. I felt both guilty and excited. My mother wanted me. She was selecting me. Despite everything, she still wanted to be my mother. That had to imply something, right? The night before her discharge, I couldn't sleep. I kept checking my phone every few minutes, and the blue glow lit up my face in the dark. She said she'd call when she got out and tell me where I could meet her. I'd slip away while Aunt Sarah was at work and get the bus to where she was. We would be together again. A real family. I had everything figured out. I also wrote Aunt Sarah a message thanking her for everything. I told her not to worry about me, that I would be fine. I must have revised it 5 times to find the correct wording. The morning came, and there was no call. I went to school as usual, my backpack loaded with materials. I checked my phone between each class. Nothing. Lunchtime, still nothing. Isabella asked if I would want to sit with her and her pals. I said no. Too distracted to be social. I was in a state of terror when Aunt Sarah picked me up. What if something happens? What if they don't let her out? What if she forgets about me? I ate very little of my meal, which was generally chicken and rice. Aunt Sarah inquired whether I was feeling sick. I replied yes and went to bed early. I lay there staring at my phone, hoping it would ring. It eventually rang at midnight. My heart was thumping as I answered the first ring. But it was not my mother. It was a dude. His speech sounded harsh, as if he had been smoking for years. He stated he was her friend. She stayed with him for a few days to get back on her feet. She needed money for a bus ticket to come and retrieve me. Just $100. Can I acquire it somehow? I explained that I didn't have any money. He became angry. Said I was a selfish child. Didn't I want to visit my mom? Didn't I love her? She often mentioned me as her wonderful daughter who was always willing to help her. Now I wouldn't even aid her when she needed it the most. I began crying. I said I would work something out. He told me to meet him tomorrow at the Shell petrol station on Maple Street, which is near my school. Bring whatever money I can obtain. Cash only. Don't tell anyone or my mom will get in trouble, maybe even go to jail. Did I want that? Did I want my mother in jail? I replied no, and hung up. I spent the remainder of the night figuring out where to get money. Aunt Sarah's purse was downstairs. She usually carried cash, but taking from her felt unlike stealing from students at school. She had been so lovely to me and gave me everything. But my mother needed me, and I needed my mother. The next morning, when Aunt Sarah was showering, I snatched $40 from her wallet. The bills were crisp and new, as if she had just withdrawn cash from an ATM. I felt nauseous the entire time. Almost returned it twice, but I kept thinking about my mother, about being a family again, about her choosing me. I went to school with cash burning a hole in my pocket, could not concentrate on anything. I continued to watch the clock. During lunch I walked to the gas station. The man was there, as he had said, tall and slender with tattoos on his neck, some sort of serpent or dragon. He grabbed and counted the money. They said it wasn't enough. My mother needs at least 200. I told him it was all I had. He went on. I better find more by tomorrow, or your mom would be really disappointed. Then he got into a beat-up truck that emitted black smoke. I returned to school feeling worse than ever. My mother had not arrived, and I had already spent $40. That night, I couldn't eat at all. Aunt Sarah stroked my forehead and said I appeared warm. Maybe I should stay at home tomorrow. I said no too soon. She gave me a weird look but didn't push it. After she went to bed, I sneaked downstairs again. The steps creaked beneath my feet, and I froze every time, listening for movement. She discovered her emergency cash in the kitchen drawer, $200 in 20s. I took it all. I figured I'd need it for the man, plus an extra for my mother when she arrived. I went back to bed but couldn't fall asleep. I kept thinking about Aunt Sarah finding the money gone, what she'd think, and what she would do. The next day, I met the man again and gave him the $200. He smiled and added, my mom would be overjoyed. She'd call me tonight for sure, set up a time and place to meet. I believed him because I had to. I spent the rest of school in a daze. Isabella invited me to come over after soccer practice. Her mother was making tacos. I said, maybe another time. She appeared hurt, but I couldn't think about it. I had to focus on my mother, our strategy, and being a family again. That night, Aunt Sarah made my favorite dinner. Spaghetti with genuine meatballs, not canned ones. She'd been cooking all day, and the house smelled like garlic and tomatoes. I made myself eat so she wouldn't worry. She mentioned weekend plans. Maybe we could go to the movies or the beach if it was warm enough. She would pack a picnic and bring Bruce. I nodded and smiled while feeling like the worst person in the world. She was preparing our weekend, and I intended to disappear. After supper, she hugged me and said she loved me. I almost told her everything right away. Almost. But I did not. I just hugged her back and went to my room. My phone rang at 10 o'clock. Another unknown number, but this time it wasn't my mother's. It was a dude. He mentioned there was a problem. My mom was arrested. Something about old warrants. She needed $500 in bail money. Could I have it? I said no. That was too much. He told me I didn't comprehend. If she didn't get bail, she'd stay in jail for months or maybe years. Is that what I wanted? Is my mother languishing in jail because her daughter refused to aid her? I started crying again. I told him I would try. He told me I had till tomorrow night. After that, my mother was on her own. I knew Aunt Sarah didn't have $500 sitting around, but she did have a jewelry box in her room. Some of it seemed pricey. Perhaps I could pawn a piece. She had so much, she was unlikely to notice anything missing, at least not immediately. And by then, I would be with my mother. We would figure out how to repay her. My mom would acquire a job, like she promised. We'd save money and purchase Aunt Sarah some new jewelry. Better stuff even. I waited till I heard Aunt Sarah snore, snuck into her room as quietly as I could. The jewelry box was on her dresser, made of dark wood with small flowers engraved on the top. I opened it cautiously. Lots of necklaces, rings, and bracelets. I grabbed a gold necklace that appeared weighty. I figured gold was quite expensive. I was about to depart when I noticed a picture tucked under the mirror of myself and Aunt Sarah during my first soccer game. We're both hugely beaming. I appeared happy. Very happy. Happier than I had ever been with my mother. I stood there staring at it, clutching the necklace, and thinking about everything. Then Aunt Sarah awoke. I saw myself standing there with her jewelry. I expected her to yell, call me a thief, and kick me out. But she only looked sad. They asked me to sit down. I sat on her bed, holding the jewelry. She inquired if I needed money for anything. I began sobbing. I told her everything, about my mother's call, the man, the money I had already taken, and the bail. Everything simply spilled out. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she asked for my phone. I handed it to her. She reviewed the calls. Then she gave me a hug. They told me that none of this was my fault. My mother was sick and was taking advantage of me. The man was probably her dealer. There was no bail or arrest, just more lies to get money for drugs. I wanted to argue, to tell her she was incorrect, and that my mother loved and needed me. But deep down, I knew Aunt Sarah was correct. My mother had been gone for days and had not come to see me. Just sent a man to collect money. The same design as always. Same lies, same manipulation, same me falling for it because I really wanted her to love me, select me, and be a genuine mother. But she wasn't capable of it. Perhaps she never was. Aunt Sarah called the police and gave them the man's description as well as the location of the petrol station. She then called to change my phone number. We said we'd deal with the stolen money tomorrow. Tonight, I just needed to sleep. She snuggled me into bed like I was a small child. Sat with me until I stopped crying. She told me she loved me. That I was safe. That I didn't have to care for anyone other than myself. She was now responsible for my well-being. And she was not going anywhere. The next few weeks were difficult. I was waiting for my mother to show up and knock on the door, demanding to see me. But she never arrived. The individual was arrested for dealing. Police claimed he provided information about my mother. She was back to using, living in a residence with other addicts. They probably didn't recall phoning me. Or perhaps she did and simply didn't care enough to try again when the money stopped arriving. Either way, it hurts the same. Aunt Sarah helped me get into therapy. Dr. Martinez was a lady who specialized in youngsters like me, kids who had to grow up too quickly and cared for their parents rather than the other way around. There were soft seats and tissues on every table in her office. She taught me about boundaries, about how it wasn't my responsibility to save my mother. How could I not love her in good health? How her addiction was neither my fault nor my responsibility. In my mind, everything makes sense. It's harder for me to believe in my heart. I started performing better in school. It turns out that when you're not always worrying about your mother, you can concentrate on your studies. My grades improved from good to great. Teachers began to notice me, for good reasons. Not because I was stealing or sleeping during class. Isabella welcomed me to her house again. This time, I answered yes. We played computer games, ate pizza, and spoke about boys we thought were attractive. Normal kid things. It felt weird but good. The soccer season had concluded, and Aunt Sarah had signed me up for basketball. I was bad at it too. My teammates, however, didn't seem to care. They simply wanted me to have fun, so I did. I sprinted around, missed shots, and smiled when I fell. Aunt Sarah attended every game. We cheered even though we lost. I took the entire team out for ice cream afterwards. Some of the other parents approached her and asked if I might attend sleepovers and birthday celebrations. She would always say yes. My therapist told me that I was making improvements, learning to be a child rather than a caretaker. However, I still had awful days. There were days when I missed my mother so badly that it pained physically. When I remembered the happy times and forgot about the bad. When I worried whether I gave up too easily, if I should have worked more, done more, or been better. Dr. Martinez stated that those feelings were typical. They would probably never go away fully, but they'd become easier to manage. And they did. Slowly. Aunt Sarah once asked whether I wanted to go visit my mother. She was at a rehab facility, a real one this time, had been clean for 60 days. Her counselor thought that visiting me would help her heal. But only if I wished to. There's no pressure either way. I thought about it for a week. I changed my mind 12 times. Finally, I decided yes. I needed to see her. To determine whether she was truly trying this time or if it was simply another lie. The facilities were wonderful, clean and light, with plenty of windows, nothing like I had expected. My mother was waiting in the visiting room. She looked different, healthy. Her skin was clear and her hair had been washed. She had gained good weight. When she spotted me, she began to cry. I did too. We hugged for quite a while. She smelled like soap rather than smoke, felt solid rather than fragile. When we sat down, she grabbed my hand. Apologized for everything. She said she understood if I despised her. That she had been a dreadful mother. Put me through things that no child should go through. She said she was sorry. I am terribly sorry. I told her that I didn't dislike her. I loved her. Always had, even when things were horrible. Especially when things got worse. She cried harder. She said she didn't deserve my love, but she appreciated it. That she was working hard to become healthy. Attending meetings, taking medication, and learning how to deal with her difficulties without using drugs. That she wanted to be the mother I deserved. Even if it took years and I never trusted her again, she was willing to try. We spoke for an hour about school, soccer, and Aunt Sarah. She stated she was delighted I was with Sarah, and that her sister was a nicer person than she had ever been. She only wanted me to feel protected and loved. When our visit ended, we hugged again. She stated she loved me and will always love me. That she'd call when the institution allowed it, write letters, and do anything I wanted with no pressure. My recovery began initially. She was willing to wait as long as needed. Aunt Sarah drove me home silently. Allow me to comprehend everything. When we returned, she prepared hot chocolate and we sat on the couch. I told her about the visit, how my mother appeared different, how she apologized and claimed she wanted to get better. Aunt Sarah listened and nodded. She said she hoped it was true that my mother would stay clean, but that we should take things one day at a time. No expectations, no pressure. Just see what happens. My mother did call once a week as she promised. We talked about safe topics like school, friends, and the books I was reading. She informed me about her recovery, the steps she was taking, the job training program she had entered, and the apartment she intended to receive once she left the institution. Small things, ordinary things, gave me hope. But I was cautious with that expectation. Keep it tiny and protected. I didn't let it get too huge too fast. Months passed like that. Phone calls are made every Sunday at 3 p.m. My mother keeps me clean. I got out of the facility and into a halfway house. I started working in a supermarket shop, stocking shelves. She sent me images of her small room, which only had a bed and a dresser, but she was proud of it. She claimed it was the first place she had paid for with her own money in years. I hung the photos on my bulletin board next to my soccer team photo. Then one day, she suggested we meet for lunch. It's just the two of us. Somewhere public. Aunt Sarah may drop and pick me up. There is no pressure. I pondered about it for 3 days. I asked Dr. Martinez what she thought. She told me I had no choice than to believe my instincts. My gut felt afraid, but also fascinated. So I answered, yes. We met in a Denny's near her halfway house. She was already there when I arrived, sipping coffee and appearing apprehensive. She stood up when she noticed me. We exchanged awkward hugs before sitting down and staring at our menus. The waitress came by twice before we were ready to order. Finally, I received pancakes. She received a salad. We made small chat about the weather, my upcoming basketball season, and her employment. Then she took out an envelope. Inside was $240. I stole the money for her dealer. She claimed she'd been saving to repay it. I wanted to give it to Aunt Sarah, but I figured I should do it. Part of making amends. I stared at the money. I remembered stealing it. How terrified I was. How desperate. She stated she was sorry for placing me in that situation, for making me believe I needed to care for her, for being the type of mother whose children had to steal to survive. I informed her Aunt Sarah wasn't concerned about the money, that she'd forgiven me immediately. My mother nodded. Sarah was described as being good in this regard. They had always been together, even as children. Then she told me memories of growing up with Aunt Sarah, how Sarah always watched out for her and tried to help when things became tough. But my mother was too arrogant and stubborn, pushed her away, chose substances over family. I've regretted it every day since. After lunch, my mother led me outside to wait for Aunt Sarah. She asked if we might do it again, perhaps once a month. I responded that I will think about it. She claimed that was fair, more than fair. When Aunt Sarah pulled up, my mother waved but did not approach the car. I got in, and we drove off. I saw my mother shrink in the side mirror. She stood there until we rounded the corner. That night, I handed Aunt Sarah the money. She attempted to reject it, but I insisted. He said it was important. She placed it in her wallet, and that was that. There was no big issue or drama. It was simply done. We made tacos for dinner and watched a movie. Bruce snuggled up between us on the couch. Normal Tuesday night activities. It felt nice. I met my mother for lunch once a month after that. Always go to the same Denny's. I always eat pancakes and she eats salad. She remained clean. Was promoted to shift supervisor. I moved into a real apartment with a roommate named Brittany, who was also recovering. They showed me images of their property, which was clean and simple. Nothing extravagant, but better than wherever we'd previously lived together. On my 13th birthday, she asked if she could take me shopping. Real shopping. Not stealing or scraping together. She had a budget set aside for everything. Aunt Sarah said okay but was concerned. I was afraid too, but my mother arrived on time. Took me to the mall. Let me choose clothes, books, and a new backpack for school. They did not complain about the prices or make me feel guilty. Even bought us pretzels in the food court. When she dropped me off, she handed me one more present. A note. He said to read it when I was ready. Perhaps with Aunt Sarah. Perhaps with Dr. Martinez. Perhaps alone. Whatever seemed perfect. I waited till nightfall. I sat on my bed and carefully unwrapped it. Her handwriting was neat. Cleaner than I recalled. The letter was long. 5 pages, front and back. She wrote about her background, including how her father abandoned her when she was 7 and how her mother worked 3 jobs and was never home. How she began drinking at the age of 12 to alleviate her loneliness. By the age of 15, I had advanced to more difficult material. I met my father when I was 17. He was older and had money. It seemed like a way out. But he was only another addict. They helped each other. They made each other worse. She wrote about finding out she was pregnant with me and how she tried but failed to become clean. How mother got herself to quit when I was born. But addiction does not function that way. She loved me from the moment she saw me, but love wasn't enough. The substances always prevailed. She always put herself first, even when she loathed herself for it, even when she noticed how it was affecting me. She wrote of being both proud and horrified as she watched me take care of myself. I felt proud to be so capable. I'm horrified that I had to be. She'd lie in her room, high, listening to me cook dinner, do schoolwork, and take care of everything. How she wanted to help but couldn't move. Couldn't think beyond the next fix. She kept promising herself that tomorrow would be different, but it never came. She wrote about the day I was taken away. How it was both the saddest and best day of her life. Worst of all, she lost me. Best, because I was now safe. How she spent the first month of therapy planning to lure me back, using the same promises and lies. How her counselor forced her to accept the truth. She was incapable of being my mother. Not then. Perhaps not ever. That love entailed letting me go. She wrote about seeing me thrive with Aunt Sarah, receiving updates from the facility, hearing about soccer, friendships, and good grades, how it ached and healed all at once. I knew I was happy. I knew it was without her. How she had to learn to accept that, to value my happiness more than my presence, to adore me more than she needed me. The final page was around now. How she got up every day and decided to stay clean. Not for me. For herself. Because she realized she deserved better. How she went to meetings, completed the steps, and assisted other addicts. How she was developing as a person, not simply an addict or a lousy mother, a complete individual, both good and evil, and all in between. She finished by stating she loved me, would always love me. That I saved her life by leaving, living without her, and showed her what she was missing and ruining. That she did not expect forgiveness. I did not expect a relationship. Just wanted to know the truth. The entire truth. That I was the best thing she ever did. Even if she did it poorly. Even if it harmed both of us. It was her best achievement. And her greatest regret. Both are true simultaneously. I sobbed while reading it. I cried harder when I showed it to Aunt Sarah. Cried at Dr. Martinez's office while discussing it. I cried because it answered questions I never knew I had, explained things I was too young to understand, made my mother human instead of a monster. Instead of becoming bad, she was made sick. Made it easier to forgive her. Made it easier to forgive myself for failing to save her. After that, our lunches became easier. We talked about serious things, her recovery, my life, and the future. She never asked for more than I could provide. Never pushed for overnight stays, holidays, or anything more than monthly lunches. She said she was grateful for whatever I felt comfortable with, and she meant it. I could see she was different. Still my mother, but also a stranger, someone I was getting to know for the first time. My sophomore year, I made it to varsity basketball. My mother went to a game, sat in the back with the other parents, and did not try to speak to Aunt Sarah or cause a scene. Just watched and cheered when I made a shot. I left before I could find her afterwards. She sent a text saying she was proud. That was it. Perfect in its simplicity. There will be no drama or expectations, only support. She attended many games after that, always in the back and leaving discreetly. Sometimes I'd wave, and she'd wave back. I was sometimes too focused on the game to notice her. Either way was acceptable. She was there because she wanted to be, not because she had to be, or because I needed her to be. Just because. In her junior year, she moved into her own place. No roommate. It's just her and a cat named Harley. She had been promoted to assistant manager, had health insurance, and a savings account, all of which felt like miracles. She invited me over to dinner. Aunt Sarah might also come to ensure everything was safe. I responded that I will think about it. It took me a month to decide. Dr. Martinez stated that there was no haste and no correct answer, only what felt comfortable. So I went. Aunt Sarah dropped me off but did not come inside. Said it was my thing. My choice. She would be right outside if I needed her. My mother prepared spaghetti not from a jar. Real sauce with tomatoes, basil, and garlic. We ate and talked about school, her cat, and anything but the past. That was nice. Weird but wonderful. I started going over once or twice a month. Always told Aunt Sarah where I was. I always had my phone. I always had an escape strategy, but I never used it. My mom kept things light and safe. She proved to me she could be trusted, at least with this. At least for now. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything. She attended my senior year's graduation. This time I sat with the other parents, rather than in the back or hiding. Right there beside everyone else. I took pictures as I walked across the stage, and then hugged me quickly and carefully. She told me she was proud of me, that she loved me, and that she'd see me at lunch next week before leaving. No attempts to join the family festivity. No making it about her. Just there and gone. Perfect. I'm now in college. State school is roughly 2 hours from home. Aunt Sarah's residence is where I call home. Always will be. My mother and I occasionally exchange texts. I still have lunch while I am in town. She's been clean for 6 years. She has her own life, including friends from recovery, a sober boyfriend named Kyle, and a promotion to store manager. Normal problems include car repairs and tax returns. Nothing like before. She once wondered if I would ever call her mother again. I've been addressing her by her first name since I moved in with Aunt Sarah. I couldn't help it. Mom felt too weighty, too hefty, with too much history. I told her maybe someday, when it felt right, if it ever felt appropriate. She replied she understood. She said her name was great. She said that having me in her life was more than she deserved. And she meant it. Aunt Sarah is still Aunt Sarah. Still attend my games. Still make sure I eat enough. She still holds me too tightly when I come home for breaks. In all important aspects, you are still my true parent. She never legally adopted me. She stated that she did not need papers to love me or be a part of my family. She was correct. You are related through blood. Choice creates a family. She chose me every day. It still does. I am studying social work. I want to help youngsters like myself. Children who rear themselves. Who cares for parents who are unable to care for themselves? They steal, lie, and hunger to survive. Who thinks that love entails sacrifice? Who believe they are not worth preserving? Dr. Martinez predicts that I will excel at it, that my experience will benefit others. Pain can be transformed into purpose. Maybe she is right. My mother sends cards on holidays, calls on my birthday. When invited, he becomes involved in critical matters. When not in use, it stays away. We have boundaries now. Clear ones. Healthy ones. She respects them. I respect her healing. We are not mother and daughter. They are not friends either. Something in between. Something special. Something that works for us. Sometimes I think about the 11-year-old girl, making rice with ketchup, sleeping on the floor, stealing to survive, believing it was normal and loved. She was liked. It just wasn't the manner she required, not as she deserved. Nevertheless, she survived. She got out. She gathered Aunt Sarah, Dr. Martinez, teammates, and friends. She's got a life. A real life. Good life. And sometimes, when her mother calls just to say hello, to hear her voice, or to be in the same room for a few minutes, she remembers how complicated love is. People can be sick, but still love you. You may love them back without sacrificing yourself. That forgiveness does not imply forgetting. That moving ahead does not imply going back. That family is whatever you make it, whoever you choose, how you show up. So yes, that is my story. The kid raised herself. Mom chose chemicals. Aunt chose me. Not really happy, not exactly sad. It's true. Just life. Just what happened, what is happening, and what could happen next. Take one day at a time, one option at a time. Take one lunch at a time, and that's it. More than enough.